All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the February 5th Pontiac Planning Commission meeting. We're going to go ahead and get started here. All right, first thing we're going to do is introductions. On my far left here, we have our senior planner, Corey Christensen. To his right, we have our city planning manager, Mark Yandrick, Commissioner Tim Shepard, Commissioner Sue Sinclair, and Commissioner Chris Northcross. And my name is Sam Henley, and I'll be chairing the meeting this evening. And with that, we can go on to any official communications from staff.
Should we do a roll call first?
Absolutely.
All right, Commissioner Northcross.
Present.
Commissioner Sinclair.
Present.
Commissioner Henley.
Present.
And Commissioner Shepard.
Present.
We have a quorum.
And I would like to express that Commissioner McGinnis is on his way. He's expected to be here in about 10 to 15 minutes. His work obligations just ran over a little bit. Unfortunately, we've not heard from Commissioner Duvall Chair Parlov is also asked to be excused because she was traveling. So only from Commissioner Duvall we've not heard from.
Are there any other official communications this evening? Nope. All right. With that, do we have any amendments or approvals to the agenda that we need to go over tonight? Doesn't look like we do. So for the review of the meeting minutes, we're going to do both of these in one go. So if anyone has any edits to either the January 8th or the January 22nd meeting minutes, now's the time. Nope.
I sent my comments in.
Yep, okay. All set? All right, well, could I get a motion?
I move that the January 8th and January 22nd minutes be approved.
Support. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, welcome Commissioner Duvall. And with that, we're going to move on to our first item of the evening. This is zoning map amendment 24-010 for 461 West Huron.
All right, thank you.
So I would like to kind of express for the commission and for the public of why this is coming back to Planning Commission. So there was a recommended denial from Planning Commission last month, and that is solely a recommendation. Before this went to City Council, the applicant asked to revise their application. Corey will be highlighting the changes in a few minutes, and it's really reviewing with Planning Commission further before it goes to City Council. So, and then the applicant has shared with the city a presentation they want to make on behalf of their application as well. So there was no formal decision on this letter. It never went to City Council. This is really just a second version of the application. The biggest highlight is with the conditions offered by the applicant were the number of stories, which has been reduced to 4, and the total number of units for the facility or for the potential multifamily residential building. So, Corey, you can take the presentation.
All right, so same as last month, this is application ZMA 24-10. This is a zoning map amendment to change the zoning of 461 West Huron, which is not actually on West Huron, from P1 parking to R4 multifamily elevator district. Staff is recommending the Planning Commission recommend approval based on the findings of fact outlined in the staff report and with the new conditions supplied by the applicant. And as Mark already explained, the reason this is coming back forward is because of the change in conditions. So here we are in the process. Planning Commission is holding a public hearing. After this, whether it's recommended approval or denial, it continues on to City Council for the first reading, followed by a second reading. This gives you an idea of where the property is located within our zoning map. Let's see if the pointer works. Well, the parcel in question is highlighted in red. It sits below another parcel zoned P1 as well, and across the street from the hospital, which is zoned R3. Most of the parcels in the immediate area are zoned R1, single-family residential. However, there's quite a few P1s and some multi-family residential in the area. When you go a little further north to Huron, it's all commercial. This is an aerial showing the same thing. You can see the parcel sits to the east of the hospital, to the south of the parking area, to the north and to the west of the single-family neighborhood. This is an image taken from Google Street View in October of 2021, looking northeast from South Johnson Street. This is to give you an idea of some existing conditions. This is another photo taken from Green Street, looking west. This photo was taken in August of 2018. And then this is looking north from Johnson Street to give you some context on the area. The red line there indicates the subject parcel boundaries where the proposed development will occur. This is this was provided by the applicant to give you an idea of the site area. As you can see, it is not the entire parking area. However, it is the entire parcel on the south end. This parcel, like several parcels adjacent to Pontiac General Hospital, is zoned P1 parking. The 2014 Master Plan's future land use map shows this area as entrepreneurial, industrial, commercial, and green. Historic aerial photography indicates the property has been utilized as a parking lot since the late 1970s. Aerials from 1973 and before show the property as being subdivided and utilized for single-family homes. The current owner just purchased the property in 2024. The property sits within a string of P1 zoned parcels adjacent to Pontiac General Hospital, which is a 6 to 7 story building. The P1 zoning for the subject parcel was most likely established at the time the property was converted from single-family homes to parking to support parking for Pontiac General Hospital. If this rezoning were to be approved, buffering will be required where the parcel abuts residential, which is at the south and southeast corner. This portion will be required a type A buffer, which is either a masonry wall with 2 deciduous trees per every 100 feet, or no masonry wall and 1 deciduous tree, 6 evergreen trees, and 8 shrubs for every 100 feet. Nearby multifamily residential structures include Casa del Rey and Huron Place Apartments. So the following is the new conditions. Well, these are all the conditions being offered, but the ones highlighted in bold are either new or modified from the last time you saw them. The most important and the first one presented is the building height, which has been limited now to no more than 4 stories. Previously, this came forward, it was 6 stories, so the applicant is offering a significant reduction. The maximum number of dwelling units for the property shall be limited to no more than 90 units. Prior to this condition, there was no guarantee on the number of units. However, they could fit however many they could fit on the property and meet the zoning code would be allowed. But now the applicant is bringing forward a self-imposed limitation of 90 units. In addition, they are bringing forward access drives to the property being limited to South Johnson Avenue in order to reduce the impacts this may have on Green Street. In addition to this, the following conditions are the same from last month. Increased buffer landscaping along Green Street and the adjacent residential parcel to 15 feet in width. And the existing masonry wall to the south will be repaired and preserved on site to provide a buffer from adjacent single-family homes. I'm not going to go too in-depth on this. You've seen this slide a million times, but basically the P1 parking district only allows parking. The R4 district is very much like the R3 district, which you are familiar with the addition of an increased height allowance, an increased number of floors, and a requirement for elevators if you are over 5 floors. And again, you're very familiar with. These are the 10 standards for approval you have to use in order to make your decision. They are as follows: consistency with the goals, policies, and objectives of the master plan, compatibility of the site's environmental features, evidence the applicant cannot receive a reasonable return on investment under the current zoning, compatibility of all the potential uses with surrounding uses, the capacity of the city's utilities and services, the capabilities of the street system, the boundaries of the requested rezoning district are reasonable, the requested zoning district is considered to be more appropriate than the current zoning, rezoning the land is considered to be more appropriate than amending the list of permitted uses in that district, and rezoning will not create an isolated or incompatible zone. Staff's analysis on these standards is the future land use map classifies this parcel as entrepreneurial, industrial, commercial, and green. The zoning classification is intended to encourage the positive reuse of vacant or underutilized property in strategic locations around the city. The property does not have any known natural features that require protection. It is already covered in an impervious surface. The site is suitable for redevelopment. The current zoning designation would only permit a parking lot. If they are to redevelop the site for any other use, a rezoning is required. The uses permitted in the R4 district are consistent with those in the R3 district, which already abut the existing single-family neighborhood. The city engineer has reviewed the requested rezoning and has not identified any issues in terms of utility service. West Huron Street is a major commercial street that can accommodate commercial traffic. Furthermore, Johnson Street, which serves as the connector, already services Pontiac General Hospital and other high-intensity uses without issue. The proposed rezoning is appropriate in terms of parcel size, and a structure can be built on site in compliance with the required setbacks for the R4 district. Every other parcel in the immediate area is zoned for R1, one-family dwelling, R3, multifamily, residential, or P1 parking. This is a residential area with a residential character. South Johnson Street is a Type B street with heavy traffic generated by the adjacent hospital. Approval of this request would not create an isolated or incompatible zone in the neighborhood. And with that, staff's recommendation, same as last month, is to recommend approval to City Council. And I have sample motions for your use.
Thank you, Corey. And with that, we're going to go through. Does anyone have any questions for staff? Commissioner Duval?
No.
Commissioner Shepard?
No questions yet.
Commissioner Sinclair?
No questions.
And Commissioner Northcross?
I'll wait until after the public hearing.
All right. So with that, if our applicant would like to approach the microphone and if they'd like to add any more context.
Chair, can we ask for just 60 seconds just for administrative before the speaking for just a second?
Absolutely.
We can, that would be great. Thank you.
Right, if you can go ahead and present.
Hello, my name is Jim Pappas. I'm with Fusco Schaefer and Pappas Architects. How do I advance?
Oh, yeah, I see the red button on.
He's giving his own presentation.
Your PowerPoint.
Yes. Thank you. All right.
Jake, we're good now, so no,
Which way is forward?
This was forward.
Okay, thanks. Good evening. I just wanted to re-highlight some of the modified conditions that we're offering with the project. And this really stems from the previous meeting that the Planning Commission, as well as some of the community, had some concerns with regard to some of the density and height on the site. So the intent of the redesign and just offering some lower density onto the site. Let's see. Yes, no, maybe?
There, it's working now.
Oh. All right. Was that the first one? Okay. Again, we had proposed a maximum of 6 stories previously, so we have reduced that down to reduce density on the site and limit it to 4 stories as one of the conditions of rezoning. Additionally, there was no limitation on the number of units on the site, so we have reduced that to 90 units on the site. One of the other concerns was access to some of the adjacent residential streets, so we're limiting all of our access from South Johnson. The increased landscaping that we had around the perimeter, that is still one of the conditions that we're offering, as well as repairing the existing masonry wall so that we have an increased landscape buffer, as well as the existing masonry wall. This is a very schematic site plan. There was some questions about what are we thinking about for the site. So initially, the intent was try to get the buildings as close to South Johnson as possible and away from the residential area. So this is, again, very conceptual. Nothing set in stone at this point, but trying to show something. Additionally, there was some questions regarding what this might look like We do not have a design for this site yet. However, I do have some examples of a four-story. This is currently a project we're working on. This is affordable housing in another community, but just to give you an idea of the types of projects that we do. So just some conceptual renderings of a similar four-story. Some additional renderings. And just some notes about affordable housing. Affordable housing increases crime. It does not. Our firm works on a lot of affordable housing throughout the state of Michigan, and it actually creates communities where we've been involved in these projects. Things like decreasing property values. A well-done affordable housing community does not decrease property values. Or is it an eyesore? You saw the examples of the projects we're proposing. The designs that we develop, if I asked you if it was affordable, market rate, or high-end, you would not be able to tell the difference by looking at them. People take advantage, and affordable housing is Section 8. This particular type of financing that we're proposing through the LIHTC program provides housing. It does based on income levels. So the majority of the people working in the building have to maintain income levels in that area. We do have, there were some questions about, so what are the income levels that we anticipate for this particular project? At 50 and 60% of income that we're basing the project on, you can see the 1, 2, and 3 persons as examples of adjusted gross incomes. And that was the end of our presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have regarding the project. And again, we are very, very early stages of design and are here for rezoning at this particular meeting.
Thank you. With that, Commissioner Duval, do you have any questions for our applicant at this time?
I do, and I know this is just the rezoning area issues or concerns, but do you, who's your property manager for this?
Who's that?
Is it the same people who manage the Phoenix Center that?
Higgins Group?
Okay, so it's not KMG anymore?
So because of the community outreach last time and everything that you guys kind of said about KMG, we decided to go with a more localized management company because there's only so many vendors the state of Michigan allows you to use. And Higgins Group was one of those, and they're local. They're out of 15 Mile and Telegraph, I believe, and they manage projects in Rochester Hills and Auburn Hills, and all of them are right around the area. So
Okay.
Can you introduce yourself again? Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm Noah Link.
Okay.
Appreciate that. How long have you owned the property?
This property, October 2024.
Okay. So you really not held accountable for the way it looked before then?
It's been looking like that for a while now.
Yeah. That's all I have.
Commissioner Shepard.
Well done. I mean,
Yeah.
you kind of addressed a lot of the issues that we talked about last time. And by bringing a rendering, I think you showed that it's not going to be right up to the neighbors. So from how I look at it, you answered a lot of the concerns. I mean, I think a lot of people were worried about the towering 6 stories. So in bringing us the fact of, I know we're not here for a site plan approval, but having renderings helps. So bring us something nice. If this gets approved tonight, just bring us something great on the next time. So, and it helped what you did when you explained affordable housing, or low-income housing. I mean, it's not. I think the concern was you were going to be moving in, from a lot of people's, homeless shelter. That's not what this is. This is, that's a pretty good income range. So, but yeah, from my end, thank you for what you did. So,
If I may.
Yes,
Madam
Commissioner
Chair,
Duval.
I just wanted to say that I attend Welcome Church, and I know that it's very congested over there as is, and so my concern is the activity and the parking and everything that goes along with that. So I'll still state that that's still a concern. So, go ahead.
Commissioner Sinclair.
I know you sent a representative out to our district meeting, our community group meeting. She passed out these flyers, these pamphlets. Would have been nice if you had attended. She didn't know anything about the project. Luckily for you, I did. And I had to answer the questions based on what you said last time. In this pamphlet, it says 90 beautifully appointed units, 18 studios, 44 one-bedroom, and 18 two-bedroom. That adds up to 80. Is it 80 or is
No,
it
that
90?
was, and that was a typo that when Mary sent them to me, I said, hey, you had a typo in there. And
So the 90 is a typo, or is the breakdown a typo?
I believe it should have been, the one bedrooms should have been a 45. I'm not looking at it right now, but it was a typo in the one bedroom unit count.
Okay, that counts for one. There's still a difference of 9. Are you planning on, how many elevators are you planning on putting in the buildings? I'm asking that just for, I know you're going for LIHTC funding.
Right. We haven't got to that design point yet in this building.
Okay. Because I know you're saying 90 units. If you have 90 units and you plan on putting 45 in each building, you're going to have 2 elevators per building. I don't know what your plan is. I just wanted to point that out, that our ordinance states that there can be no more than 10 units per floor per elevator.
Right.
So if there's any more than 10, it'll be
Right.
above that. And again, I'm concerned with the traffic and the congestion in that area, based on the church and this other apartment complex opening. So those are my comments right now.
And just a point of information, I just wanted to clarify, the conditional rezoning offered by the applicant is for 90 units. Now, they can always go under, but that is a maximum that's being proposed, at least this evening. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Northcross, do you have any questions for our applicant?
Well, the projected parking at 90 units,
Yes?
and I guess in my calculations, I was assuming that a studio apartment was also the same as a one-bedroom. Am I correct in that?
The parking requirement is 1.1 spaces per bedroom. That's required to have 99 parking spaces per the ordinance, and we have 99 parking spaces. We meet the ordinance requirements. Again, this is not site plan approval, but we're not requesting any, we will not be requesting any less parking than is required by the ordinance.
Okay.
If I may, just to provide some clarity, so studio apartments are considered one bedroom in terms of calculating.
Okay. I was looking for that in the ordinance. I'm not sure I saw it. So thank you. It sounds like we're all on the same page on that one. I'll wait until after the public hearing.
Great.
Reserve to come back if I have other questions. You're right to come back.
Thank you, Commissioner Northcross. I will also be saving my comments for afterwards. If the applicants could please take their seats, we'll go ahead and move into the public hearing portion of this application. For this public hearing, each person will get 1 time to speak, and since this item was just here less than a month ago, each person is going to have 2 minutes to speak on this topic. All questions must be related to this application. There will be a public comment later on in the evening where you can talk more on any other topics you'd like. Please, when you're speaking, give your name and address and direct all your comments towards the Planning Commission, not our applicant. And with that, we're going to go ahead and open up the public hearing.
Good evening. My name is Mrs. Truitt, and I live in Seminole Hills. And I was here the last month already, and I objected to it then, and I still objected to it today. Even 4 stories and 90 units. I thought first it was 6 stories and 100 units, and now it's 4 story and 90 units. That's still way too many. And where is the parking going to be, and all the in and out traffic? And who is going to pay for the infrastructure like sewers and water? Are the Pontiac residents going to pay for that? Can anyone answer that?
We'll be answering the questions after the public hearing.
Pardon me?
We'll be answering questions after the public hearing.
I thought,
They can't answer anything, you just have to have 2 minutes to talk.
okay, just like I said, and all the traffic around there, that's just not right for the residents. Just because somebody wants to put a building in there. Well, maybe if it's 2-story, it would be all right. But 4 stories, no. I'm very much opposed to it. And besides, we don't even have a picture up there of a building, how it's actually going to look like, and how many greeneries there is. There is nothing put in stone yet. I think before the rezoning should be approved, we should know about that. Thank you.
Good afternoon, council and attorneys and building and safety. I have a question. You are talking about the old Pontiac General Hospital, am I right, at 461 West Huron? Okay, I had to make sure because I thought you kind of threw me off. Listen to this. I have a lot of questions, actually. The parking lot that's across the street, I imagine that's the parking lot that they're speaking of. What concerns me the most is that you don't have updated pictures as of today, from even within a year's time, of what that property looked like. The fencing around there, the weeds and the growth is nothing like the pictures that you constantly present to the public, which is a false impression of what's really going on. Now, I don't have an objection to what they're going to do with the old building because it's been back and forth in different hands. But the residents of Pontiac, they are fully aware of what's been going on with that parking lot within that neighborhood. And then you have the old apartments that was connected to the old Pontiac General Hospital that stayed vacant and really look like crap. So it needs to be clarity on what the structure, the whole format, and clarity of what's going to happen. To sit here and say maybe 90, maybe 80 is not really acceptable, again, once given false impression to the residents that's listening to the Planning Commission. It's so many unupdated information that's not being presented. It's only being based off from 2018, 2022, which is not very fair.
Hello, I'm Paul Hudacek, 117 Green Street. So my property's directly across the street from the development. And I'll preface this by saying, I applaud you for wanting to develop in Pontiac. You know, that's really good. But everything has to be with the thought of the existing community and how these developments affect the local areas, especially who's right there. The main issue I have is with this parking, and potentially you're looking at, if there's 90 apartments, you could have 300 cars potentially. Where do these cars go? And on Green Street, you can only park on one side of the street right now. So if they can't be contained on the property, where are they going? That's the main thing. And also, I have to say, a lady before me also made a good point. Those photos of the property are from 2018. That's a long time ago. I've been looking at this all summer long, and since you guys have bought the property, I've seen nothing really improve on the maintenance of the property from when you purchased it to now. And it was as bad as when the property was owned by the city. And there's been garbage, debris, there's tree trunks laying on there. And I almost moved to myself because I was so fed up with looking at it constantly. So they didn't exactly go out of their way to make the property look good when you first purchased it. So that itself would have been a bonus as me being the neighbor and looking at this. So I appreciate your time. Thanks.
Good afternoon. I'm Robert Sabins. I live at 255 West Strathmore. I recommend approval. I ride past there every day. It does look like the pictures. I mean, if they do something like the photos, I think that would be well worth, what it looks like now. And, I mean, I don't know what else to say, but that I think approving it would be a good choice. Thank you.
Hello. I've lived in Pontiac all my life in that same house. If I could roll this back to the aerial photo, that would be great.
Sure.
All right, so,
Excuse me, if you could stay at the microphone.
okay, I want to point out some things.
We need you to stay at the microphone so we can get it recorded.
Up here, there's two little apartment buildings. They've been abandoned for about 30, 40 years. They've just been abandoned there, right? He wants to put up some more properties. There's right down West Huron, there's another very high-rise building bank that's been there for 30, 40 years abandoned. He already changed to another management company. I'm worried about what's going to happen in the future to these buildings. Once you revise this, there is parking lots you can see right next to here. So if the hospital sells those, what's next? They're going to want to do the same thing, right? Well, we have the historical district and some of the oldest houses in all of Pontiac there, right, man, in the 1800s. This is not a good look for Pontiac in the most richest neighborhood in the whole town, right? Let's put some Section 8 housing. Okay. Second of all, what is the plan after these buildings go up? He's already changed management companies, which worries me. Before it was KGM. Now it's a new company. I don't know what that is. I'm very concerned on how fast things are changing with no actual plans to the point we don't even have the real picture. I spoke to NOAA outside. There's going to be residents, people in here that work for NOAA that are going to speak on this podium. They're hired, literally paid for, to speak here on a public opinion. So I strongly suggest we check where these people are living when they come up here to speak, if they live in Pontiac, right? If they actually are here, residents that are concerned and they're not being paid to speak for testimonial. Thank you.
No name and address was provided.
115 South Johnson, Pontiac, Michigan. I live right there next to that building.
It wasn't recorded, though.
I mean, I'll go back up there.
Good evening. My name is Charlotte Stevens. I live at 657 East Pike in Pontiac. I feel there's a lot of land in Pontiac that needs to be developed, and I think that would be a good one. I have a lot of family and friends that had to move out of Pontiac because of the affordable living and stuff. Yeah, I think the apartment building would make a good access out of Pontiac. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Erica Claudio, 19 South Marshall Street. I think it'll be a good idea. I'm 28, been here my whole life, and I drive by there quite a bit, and it does look a little rough, and I think it'll bring a little light to that area. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michael Burney. I live at 100 State Street. I think it would be a good reason to, rebuild a, nice affordable housing there. Look how long it's been empty. What are you going to do with it? Basically anyhow, it'll help the neighborhood. I think it would myself, and, it would just bring Pontiac back, Must sound that good at this, but I think it would be a great idea, Thank you.
Good evening. Excuse me. My name is Dennis Malbuff. I live at 78 East Ypsilanti Avenue, Pontiac, Michigan. I've lived in Pontiac my whole life. I'm 62. And I've been driving by. I used to live on at the Studio X apartments across the street from the hospital. And that parking lot's been like that for as long as I can remember. And for somebody to come into this community and spend money to make changes in affordable housing for people and jobs. And it's an investment. People come in from out of our city to come here and put money into this community, not only to make it look better, what are we going to do with the parking lot? It's just going to sit there. Who's going to come along and develop that, and what are they going to do with it? And someone's coming along to put money into our community and its jobs and housing. And yeah, there's parking issues, but it sounds like they have a plan to work it out. They don't have an exact picture of the building, but the gentleman over there showed the building of what he builds. And I think it looks extremely well, and it's not tacky. And in my opinion, I think it should be approved, or at least considered, that we're going to develop something and move forward instead of driving by all these empty parking lots and all these old schools that are all tore down. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mike Dabish. I live at 4925 Pelletier Boulevard, Orchard Lake, Michigan. I was here just to listen about the gas station thing. This gentleman bought this property. I know a lot about this property. I've lived in this area for 50 years. I actually almost bought that property. And if I was in the planning commission, I would run, not walk, and approve this, because I was looking at it for a whole different kind of thing. I was looking at it to do semi-parking there and park vehicles there, because you can make about $250 per semi. So I almost actually bid on that property. And what this gentleman's trying to do is bring in new housing, which everybody needs, and he can just turn around and say, you know what, I can make it into a parking lot, keep it as a parking lot. And I think the neighbors wouldn't like what you can really actually park in a parking lot. That's first of all. Second of all, if everybody's concerned about the traffic that comes through there, that hospital in the glory days had so much traffic coming in and out of it, and those roads were built to be able to sustain all the traffic that comes in and out of it. I would run, not walk, and approve this, because there's other things he can put there.
Amen.
Thank you.
Just being truthful. Is there anyone else who hasn't spoken that would like the opportunity to do so on this application? It does not look like it, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. And if our applicant could return back up to the podium, if you'd like to address any comments or questions that you had that were.
Chair, while they're walking up there, there's just a few questions I did want to, if I can,
Yeah,
for
absolutely. Thank you, Mark.
The 90 apartments and I believe the engineers from the applicants have addressed this, but it's going to, depending on the number of bedrooms, going to require about 130 to 140 parking spaces, so a little less than the 300. This is not in a historic district. It is probably several blocks away from both Seminole Hills and the Franklin, Franklin Boulevard, thank you, historic district. And I believe that is it. And then this is a type, Johnson Street is a type B street. So it is designed to handle additional traffic, especially with the center turn lane.
And if I may, real quick, just a reminder to anyone who spoke, please make sure that you did sign in so that I know how to spell your name correctly. Thank you. It's at the podium. I'll get it for you.
You have the floor.
Thank you. Just to respond to a couple of comments that I did hear with regard to density. Again, we did reduce the density that we're proposing on the site. With regard to traffic, we are limiting access to only South Johnson Street. With regard to, and again, this is all, we still have to come back once this is approved to rezoning and go through the entire site plan approval process. So that's when we typically bring in detailed site plans and detailed elevations of the building, et cetera, as part of this process. The intent is, at this point, is to meet all the, we're not requesting any parking variation, so we will have parking on site that meets the requirements of the city ordinance. I think that was most of the specifics that came up.
Thank you. If you both could just stay up there for a second, we'll go through. Commissioner Duval, do you have any final questions or comments for our applicant?
I do. I'm just not convinced. Most of the people who stood up to approve don't live nowhere near the project, and that's concerning. I just think it's rushed, and without an actual vision, I know it's just it's zoning, but without an actual vision that you don't have, it's hard for me to see to that next step. It's just, I just can't see the next step and the compliance of everything that we're asking for. With you saying it's all that we have, it's all the concept. I can't visualize your concept at this moment. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Commissioner McGinnis.
Is the property currently owned or under option? It is, so you own it presently, and it has a P1 zoning. Manager Yendrick, can you share what P1 zoning permits currently?
It only allows parking for an off-site business. So when General Hospital, if this was an operating parking lot, it would be able to support parking for the General Hospital across the street or another business in the vicinity, but it is only for parking and nothing else.
Would it be able to be parking storage for vehicles or boats?
It would not be under our current zoning ordinance.
What's that business or zoning requirement?
Generally, it is more industrial zoning. There is a special exception opportunity with C3, which is corridor commercial, which is something you find more on West Huron and Cesar East Chavez Boulevard.
And if I may jump in real quick, I put up the P1 regulations on the screen. It does state the parking area shall be used for parking or passenger vehicles for incremental periods of less than 1 day. So we're talking it can only be used as temporary parking.
When it says A, the parking area shall be in connection with one or more businesses located in adjacent non-residential districts, what's the definition of adjacent?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it would have to
Do
be
you think
nearby.
we have it spelled out in our?
I don't know if it's spelled out. I've seen in other ordinances where it limits it to within 300 feet. I'm not sure what ours says.
Okay. That's important because obviously for it to be a P1 zoning district is relevant based on if there is adjacent need for that kind of volume of parking, which in its heyday, the hospital would have been. That's probably why the city would have built it as a parking lot. It would have been city property. I just am curious what the city of Pontiac allows for adjacent, meaning would it ever be viable as a P1 zoning district? How far could somebody be shuttled in? Or, we have some major employers, we have some major destinations. And I'm not saying that would be beneficial or ideal. I'm just trying to understand because we don't come across P1 zoning districts too much these days. At least, that's come to the Planning Commission a lot. So I think that even when it was here before, there's a broader understanding that the current dormant use ain't great. And the current zoning isn't really the right fit for what the city needs in that adjacent area. So P1 isn't it. And now the property owner who has it is applying for it to be residential, but residential with multiple stories. And so the question to us and the city is that a right fit? I want to say thank you for offering additional conditions. I think that's obviously really important. It makes it more realistic for what can work. I spent some time in the Johnson Quarter and looking at the hospital, and we all know as a community that we don't know what comes next for the hospital. We don't know how much longer it might be in its current or future form or current or future ownership. It's hard to tell. But those buildings, even if that exact ownership or use isn't there, those buildings and those multi-story buildings are going to be there. So I do think that the parking lots can handle multifamily apartments or multifamily living. It's just a question of how does it work and to what degree. So I wanted to say thank you for offering those conditions. That I think it makes it much more realistic and viable. When the existing condition remains the same, it's 15 foot of additional buffer. Is that correct from residential? What's the practical application of that Because what would the code have, or zoning required already? And are they saying on top of that, add 15 more feet? Or they're saying take whatever's, if it's supposed to be 5 feet, we're now making it 15?
It would either be 5 or 10, depending on a wall, and they're saying it would be 15 feet from the property line. So they're increasing that and guaranteeing 15 feet. That extra buffer yard provides additional opportunities for more landscaping, which, can create some visual buffers, but also on a soft level can also create some separation between these residential uses and then the parking lot portion of the building itself.
Thank you. To the applicants, what's identified here, and want to make sure I've got it correct, that you would want the existing masonry wall to remain. Is that my correct understanding?
Yes, we're going to repair it and leave it in place. And on top of that, provide the additional 15-foot buffer.
Is there a structural integrity issue, or is it more aesthetic?
Both.
Okay. Okay. So you want to stabilize, enhance, but retain the retaining wall, retain the that masonry wall, and it sounds like there was requirements for landscape buffering in addition to that.
Yep.
Is there any portion where there isn't an existing masonry wall, or does it kind of run the gamut, run the length?
There's fences.
Okay, so it sounds like there's some chain link action there. Should this come to fruition, should residents expect chain link remains chain link and masonry remains masonry, or what would be the, just so I understand what the condition would lead to?
We had the landscaping buffer along the streetscape where the fence is and expanded that to meet the landscaping requirements. And the wall was on the south portion of the property, so that's where we would repair it. Where the wall was will remain a wall.
Okay. And, right, our code, if it was not R4, R3 allows up to 35 feet, is that right?
That is correct, which is essentially 3 stories in most applications.
That was my question, okay.
Yep.
So a 35-foot height limit for R3 zoning would be 2 to 3, it'd be 1, 2, or 3 stories, 3 stories on the max for an R3. Can you share with us what the zoning is? So it looks like from the future land use map, I can see that it's identified this parking and the hospital-related entities. And obviously, we're modernizing our master plan literally as we speak. But so this lot is zoned P1. There's lots to the north of it zoned P1. Oh, that's interesting. So the hospital and parking lot south of it, is that correct, zoned R3?
That's correct. We double-checked because it is unusual.
Okay. So that whole stretch there from Menominee to Huron, that's fascinating. So South Johnson, everything on the hospital, the traditional hospital side, that's zoned R3. And that's in part because the hospital was city property, so the city did what they were going to do. So we got some C1 there. And what's at the corner there of Huron and the northeast corner of Huron and Johnson?
Sorry, you're referring to the C1?
Above the C1.
On the left side, and on the right side, there's an apartment building.
Oh, yeah, I know what's there. I'm curious if it's zoned a certain way.
It's still C1.
Okay.
Despite the hashing, it's continuous up.
Okay. What's the hashing telling us? Just to show it's a different parcel?
I believe it's actually an old conditional, it's either a conditional rezoning or, which is a hatch, or it's also part of the mobile food parklet overlay district.
Okay. All right. What would be your time frame, so to the community's frame of reference, this question is, do we zone it? Do we change the zoning? Do we allow something to be different than P1 parking? And then what would come next is they would have to get their architecty stuff, and they would come and apply for a site plan. Would it be preliminary?
Correct. It would be a preliminary site plan application, and it would have to come to this board.
And if I could add on Corey's point, the applicants have provided much more than what the ordinance requires. When you look at the renderings and their examples, obviously to paint a picture, but as part of the procedure for rezoning, an applicant is not required to pull a site plan together because there's a lot of financial resources for that. That would occur later after the rezoning was approved.
And so a preliminary site plan, though, doesn't require a public hearing, does it not?
That is correct.
That is correct.
And then there would be a final site plan unless the planning commission said, okay, we're almost there, we give approval for the staff to finalize.
Correct.
Yes.
Is there any special exception action that's required for what's been discussed?
There's not a special exception for this proposal, so it would just be a site plan.
Okay. So the safeguards for the city and the citizens are really baked into what does R4 limit, but then they've added a bunch of conditions, so they're already coming down lower, literally, coming down lower with those conditions. But the planning commission here gets to say yay or nay on a site plan, preliminary or final site plan. There would not be another public hearing beyond this. But after this, whether it's recommended for approval or denial, this would go to city council for 2 readings, so there'd be a public airing of it, a public speaking to it, but not a public hearing where it's mailed and posted.
Correct.
Okay, I want to make sure I understood all that. Are you able to go back to the renderings?
Which one would you like?
And we have some,
we could do
but
a
some of
slow
them-
burn of
the
what you got.
applicant.
But to the applicants, is there anything else that the neighbors, the residents, the city as a whole should get a sense of what you're hoping to achieve with the development? Or do you think it's been adequately conveyed initially?
So as far as the artist renderings that were, supplied by our architect, we plan on doing a building similar to that. Now, is it going to be the exact building? Probably not. Are the windows going to be in the exact place? Maybe not. But that's something that I believe that'll be decided when we go to Planning Commission and we go through those process. We will have a full plan at that point, and we will be prepared with exactly what we want to do when we get to that point of the project. This was more just to kind of give the community a vision of what we were envisioning. And, in my opinion, I think this building looks beautiful. And I think this would be great for the city, and especially this location. You have a 9-story building across the street that isn't in the best condition. You have a 4-story building just north of the parcel on the other side of the parking lot that is vacant and dilapidated. And I understand, some of the residents have concern that, the density in the parking, and we have on-site parking. We are not asking for off-street parking. We're not asking to use the parking lot next door. We have sufficient parking for our project. And I believe that, the landscaping and all the extra buffers we're going to put in there is going to make the project look nicer than this picture when we're done with it. That is our vision.
Where on the site, on the parcel, and I understand that this wouldn't be ironclad. Okay, thank you.
And
We're looking more at the Johnson and the north end of the parcel is where there would be structures.
Correct. And the inlet and outlet would be on Johnson Street. I don't see why any of the residents would park on Green Street or Portridge Street, as those would not be accessible, and you'd have to walk through a yard and hop a fence, so all the parking from the residents would be on the lot in the apartment project itself. Not on street, and I believe there'd be more than sufficient parking. I don't believe there'd be 200-300 cars there, and in my opinion, I think there would be less than the 99 required, and the required bike spaces that will be there too, that people that like to ride their bikes, I like to ride bikes, so, I think it's a good fit.
Where on the site would be the entry on Johnson? Would it be between the 2 structures, north of the structure?
Currently, that we're showing 2 access points off of Johnson.
Okay, but they are solely on Johnson.
Yes, and that's actually included in the conditions, that access will only be off of South Johnson.
Excellent. But it doesn't say the number of access, it's just saying South Johnson. Okay.
We probably will have 2, just because of typically fire department requirements, et cetera.
When we spoke to the fire chief, he wanted, I believe, 2
Yes.
entrances on Johnson.
Okay.
to be able to, in case a fire, to be able to pull the truck around.
And so should it ultimately be rezoned conditionally with these conditions by city council, I want the residents of the whole city to know that that's when it would be finalized where exactly it's situated, where the parking's laid out, where the landscaping's laid out, where's the ingress and egress, where's the dumpster going to be, how does that work? These commissioners do a thorough job to make sure. While this may be conceptual, that site plan is the step in which we as a city are able to ensure that there's compliance. So I want to make sure that residents are aware that there will be, it's legally required that it's got to be, there's specifically not just saying what we want to do, it's going to say this is how we are complying and this is what it must be. Is there anything else that that needs to be made in terms of what happens at the site plan to elevate for the community?
I don't really see much more to add to that. The site plan review process is two-stepped, preliminary and final. It's reviewed by various departments in the city, fire chief, water resource, and this board. So there's going to be many steps ahead before any final approval in order to make sure full compliance is achieved.
Have you already come up with a name for the structure? Maple Valley. Maple Valley?
Maple Valley.
Okay. All right. That concludes my question.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Commissioner Shepard.
As always, Mike's pretty thorough, so.
I got nothing on Sue Sinclair, especially when it comes to site plan.
Different kind of thorough.
Yeah, different kind of thorough.
So I think so the audience understands, this is a it makes it seem like this is fast, but this is a very slow process. So this is going to take them a long time to get to the, all we're here tonight to do is say this property is zoned one way and maybe we can look at zoning it another way. I think there was a question too about like who pays for the sewers and the water lines and stuff like that. And that's, you can answer that question, but that's a developer cost, correct? That's
Yes,
not,
absolutely.
It's not passed on to the neighbors, it's not passed on to the city. That's part of your development fee, correct?
Yes, and this would
So-
increase revenue for the city on the tax
Right.
basis from the property.
And, and I think it's LIHTC, but there's going to be a tax base there,
Yes, there
right?
is.
I don't know exactly what it is, but there's going to be more money coming in than going out in a development like this. So, so that's all I have. But I think the main thing is we're not looking at what they're building yet. We're just looking at what could be built there, and they've kind of allowed it. They've brought it down to a lower level. The real hard thing for them will be when they come back and bring us something that's got to be great, because more neighbors will show up for that, and that's what we want to see because we're all picky about that. So, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, the building materials, like what is the appearance of the building, all of that gets literally honed out.
Yeah, this is just to get
Yeah. Okay, Commissioner Sinclair.
I have to disagree with you, Commissioner Shepard. This is not a lengthy process. If they are going for MSHDA credits, LIHTC credits, you score additional points if you have certain things. Like if you have a site plan approval, you get more points. So this is the problem that I have with projects like this, is you have somebody that comes in, wants to do this, spends a bunch of money coming up with a concept and a plan, and then to meet a tight time frame, like April 1st, to have all the documentation in. And if we approve a R4 tonight, and I assume that you're going to go to the state of Michigan with a site plan and a concrete concept. You've got to tell them how many units and what it's going to basically look like, because they're scoring. They're scoring whether or not you have balconies or not. You get additional points if you've got balconies. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is I find it difficult to look at this, and you're right, you did come with additional information for a straight rezoning. But in the end, if you come back to me or come back to us in next month's meeting after you've gone through the city council process and gotten their approval and come back with the site plan, and all of a sudden we have to prove it, and the residents really have no input, that's where I have a problem. And I know that I look at your site plan that you have up here now, and I see the two entrances off of Johnson, and they look like you are utilizing the existing curb cuts, if I'm not mistaken? No, you're putting in new curb cuts?
We don't care where the curb cuts are now. It depends on the layout of our building and fire access.
Okay, so I know the fire department likes a P shape to get in there, come in straight and turn around like that. The building on the south portion of the lot, I mean, you're looking at a 40-foot building next to a two-story home, and that is awfully close right there for me. And I know this is just a rezoning, but I'm just having a problem with R4 next to single-family residential that close.
That's my house, just let you know. That little corner house, that's me.
Okay. As well as the traffic. I mean, you can go through there Monday at 4 o'clock, and it's going to be different than it is at, yes. I mean, I've seen the traffic. I travel that area frequently. And I'm struggling with the R4 right now. Those are my comments.
Commissioner Northcross.
Yes, I was surprised to hear that if there are infrastructure improvements, I'm thinking like the water lines that go through the street up to that property. Isn't that the, who would pay for that improvement?
They would pay from the tap side.
Yeah.
From the tap side?
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what size that water line is going up Johnson, if there's even a water line going up Johnson.
I know where it's at. It's right down the street on Johnson Street. It's right underneath.
Excuse, we appreciate your input, but we can't have any more of this back and forth from the audience.
So as part of a rezoning process, we work with the same entities with the site plan. That's Water Resource Commission, engineers, and whatnot. And our understanding with this is there is a will serve letter that this site is capable of. The water lines are capable. Obviously, the hospital required a lot of water. So this is not going to impact anyone's water bill because essentially these service taps and necessary improvements are really going to be placed on the developer who is the applicant.
And my next question is exactly how many, well, what's your estimate of the total number of parking spaces you'll be able to accommodate there?
Approximately 100, sir.
Approximately 100, just what's needed to meet code?
The standard, correct.
Okay.
To make
Now,
sure.
are we still looking at some other activities like a community center and some other things occurring within that, being contained within that building?
There will be some common areas within the building, yes.
Okay. Will they require additional parking or something? Or
No, because it's for the tenants.
just for the tenants? Okay. And if they have a party or something like that? Well, I guess that's in the 0.1 portion of the 1.1 that we have for Beth. Okay, yeah, this is going to be a major change in that area. I mean, we can't get away from that. It's going to be a major change. Okay. I guess, yeah, the process, as I see it, in terms of doing a zoning change, you know, we're looking for things that would be fatal flaws, and also trying to get a feel for, this is, well, at least for me, the likelihood that what's being said, what's being written down will yield a result similar to what we expect, without the prints, without the drawings, without the other things being there. So that's why zoning things are a little hard for me. We do have a piece of property here, P1, that right now, it's hard to use it for anything else, you know. But is this the best use?
I don't think with the current zoning, we can use it for anything, actually, because we don't own an adjacent building to the property. So right now, we're being limited on the use of this property, at least according to the zoning ordinance.
And when we go to R4, there is a condition in the R4 that this will be developed according to, what is that statement? What is it that says that what they're saying they're going to do, they're going to do? The property in question shall not be developed or used in a manner inconsistent with this conditional rezoning agreement. It sounds like we're saying R4 means that there's going to be a building and not a cemetery, which is also allowed under R4, I believe. You know, if I'm correct, is that also under R4, or am I getting that mixed up with the P1? I think R4 also allows you to have a cemetery. So I know it's kind of far-fetched, and the real question that I'm trying to ask is.
Does that condition, that clause there, make it stay with an R4 structure?
The bounds that we're speaking of right here.
So Mark's looking that up for you.
Do you have any other questions you can ask?
That's it. That exhausts my questions.
Yeah, just to keep it brief.
How many parking spots did you say you had?
There's approximately 100.
100?
Right, but this is a very concept. Our final site plan will meet the ordinance.
Okay. Because you heard what Mark said earlier about 130?
That was an estimate. Staff has never seen this drawing per se from the applicant, so this is the first time we're seeing this. But we were just approximating the number of bedrooms, so that number could be higher or lower.
Based on this, I'm coming up with 108.
Okay.
Thank you.
And also C4, if a cemetery was proposed here, even with this conditional rezoning, if a cemetery was proposed, it would be a special exception. So it's not guaranteed by right. There would be a public hearing.
Are we all set with that? Okay. Well, I think a lot's been said already, so I'll keep my comments brief. But last month, you all were here for a similar public hearing, and you heard all the comments back then. Some of them similar to tonight, and in that time, what I see is that you have heard all those concerns and comments, and you have given a genuine effort to address each and every one of them. People were very concerned with the property management firm you had chosen, and you looked into a better alternative. People were concerned about approving a rezoning without having any idea of what's to come afterwards. And you put together a great presentation, site plan, or a schematic at least, and some examples of what the building could look like. And then beyond that, adding more conditions to reduce the density, reduce the parking density, and therefore reduce the impact on the skyline for the surrounding residents. I think you've gone far and above the requirements that are required at this level. And, I was on the fence last time, but I think with the changes you've made and the effort you've put forth, I think this could be a very beneficial development for the community. And that's all my comments for now. So if you guys would like to take a seat, I think we can move on, and if we can get a motion on the table, and then we can deliberate from there.
What's going to, take place with the comments that we've made and the concerns that we have. You've got some work to do, pal. And so I move to recommend approval of the proposed rezoning of 461 West Huron Street, parcel ID 14-32-102-032 from P1 parking to R4 multiple family dwelling elevator apartments based on the findings of the fact identified in the staff report.
Do we have a support? Support.
I have a clarifying question on the motion.
Yes.
Is that motion language satisfactory to reflect the conditions offered?
I would add a statement guaranteeing that they're going to follow the conditions.
So based on the findings of fact identified in the staff report
and with the
identified conditions?
That works.
Does that speak to your motion?
What he said.
And does that speak to your second?
It does.
Okay.
And now we can consider that motion revised.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any further deliberation that Mike?
I just want to share, I think we all recognize as a city, it's in a parking purgatory, this and those surrounding lots, and we got to address that parking purgatory. They made a little reference here that I want the community to my ears heard it loud and clear. We as a city and taxpayers do make ourselves legally vulnerable if we say, I don't want nothing, let it stay P1 parking purgatory, I don't want anything to happen. That makes us legally vulnerable because we're saying, hey, you own this land and it's basically locked. You can't do anything with it. You can't have a reasonable return. Doesn't mean it has to be this zoning. I just want to flag that we can't use dormant or dead zoning as a way to sort of stop anything from changing, because then we ultimately will be forced by a court to change it, and then we got to pay the damages, we got to pay the lost, and I just want to make sure I've got that understood. It's come up over the years to the city attorney present. Did I capture that well in terms of how you've got to at least allow a private property, and including you, all of us, those of us that own property, that, can you help me understand that clearer?
To my understanding, if it's a continued denial over amount of time, then yes, a court could see it as where this isn't being allowed to be used by any landowner to rezone it to what they would want to use it for. And then just to add to that, it could potentially have it where you get it rezoned to something that through a court order that you may not necessarily have went through the commission, as typically with these public hearings, that they're forcing your hand a little bit more from an order from the court.
Thank you. The city of Pontiac has not experienced that in recent years, to your more brief time, but...
For my more brief time, not to my knowledge.
Okay. And I hope that we never have to experience that on any of our land, but it's come up over the years, so I just want to make sure I've got a better understanding on it. So I just want to say thank you to the residents who came at the last public hearing. We wouldn't be here without you really laying it down in terms of what you think is acceptable and unacceptable. We wouldn't even have these conditions if not for that. So I just want to say thank you for being there then and being there now, because you're helping shape what is to come. And there are many other steps that might cause this to crash and burn. No offense to developer. I mean, you got to afford it. You got to, give approvals, state approvals, all these different moving parts. There's a lot that can go sideways, not to mention the national economy and anything else that might go wild. So I just want to make those points and just identify that we can't let it stay this dormant parking lot, because that's not acceptable for the residents. It's not acceptable as a city. We're going to have to come to some determination at some point. And I don't want it to be us taxpayers that have to be the ones that pay to make it nicer. We do need private property owners, private developers to be the ones when it comes to single-family homes, commercial buildings, all of it. Every part of our corner of our city, we got to move in a direction so that way private developers, private property owners, all of us are doing our part to bring some of these dormant corners back to life. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Unless there are... Excuse...
Yes, I live at 26 Union Street, just next here.
I'm talking to him.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Excuse me, sir, you can't...
But I welcome parking lots in my or I welcome apartment buildings in my neighborhood.
Okay, yeah, let's do a roll call.
All right, Commissioner Duval.
Yes, approve.
Could someone turn off their mic? There we go. All right, Commissioner Sinclair.
Can I vote and explain my vote?
Sure.
I am voting no. I would rather see R3 there. We've got Casa del Rey that's being redeveloped.
Thank you.
The condos are being renovated along with the hospital. I have a friend that works at the hospital. They are supposed to be up and running shortly. I would much rather see an R3 in this area, but again, you're going for R4, so my vote is no.
Commissioner McGinnis.
Yes to approve.
Commissioner Northcross.
No to deny.
Commissioner Shepard.
Yes to approve.
Commissioner Henley.
Yes to approve.
Motion passes.
Congratulations. And with that, we are going to move on to our next public hearing.
I just
which
want to
will
share
be-
that community members, you'll have an opportunity, there'll be 2 readings at City Council. We don't know the exact date of when those will be, but so this was a recommendation. We can work to make sure that, especially since I know you live at 115 right at the corner.
The first reading at City Council is most likely the first Tuesday in March, so that it's in approximately 4 weeks.
That's the 4th of March at 6 p.m. in this same room. And it would require 2 readings, so it might be the 4th and the 18th of March.
All right. Okay, and with that, we're going to do our next public hearing. This is a zoning text amendment brought forth by the city. Giving our presentation will be Mark Yandrick.
Okay. Before I get started, what I wanted to say is this is a zoning text amendment. It was published not on Friday when it typically does. It was actually uploaded. It was uploaded.
Let's carry on the meeting.
It was uploaded this week, so if anyone's in the audience, we actually have copies of the ordinance that are back here. If you would like a copy to see for this upcoming text amendment.
You guys have to have security next time.
Guess so.
Hey, I was going to take care of
All
you guys, but he left on his own.
Okay. So this is a zoning text amendment. I swear today's National Technical Issue Day.
Hey, man, can we lock the doors?
Open public meeting.
I'm joking.
Yeah.
We're all here.
There we go. Thank you.
We're going to be in.
Okay.
Okay, let's.
All right. Good evening. So this is a city-initiated zoning text amendment. The request is for regulations for automotive services within the zoning code. City Council passed a moratorium in July prohibiting new automobile services, which includes car washes and gas stations. Now, I do want to note we do have a final site plan later tonight, but that was applied for before this moratorium was in place. So they are legally allowed to proceed. Tonight is a public hearing with Planning Commission. Upon a recommendation, this goes to City Council for 2 readings, as most zoning text amendments do. So, as I mentioned, there was a moratorium for automobile services and tire shops. It was for staff to review and propose and evaluate whether our current zoning regulations were appropriate or not. We were getting a lot of applications that were approved, and we had a lot more that were potentially coming forth. And it was really based on citizen concerns focused on health, safety, and welfare of the properties located within the vicinity. We just didn't want the cluster of them to become public nuisances, especially along commercial corridors or adjacent to residential properties. So currently, these are all permitted by special exception in C1, C3, and C4, and by right in M1 and M2 industrial zone districts. Over the last few decades, automobile services, especially auto mechanics, have proliferated the city's major thoroughfares and contributed to increased blight and disruption of residential neighborhoods. And we're not saying that one is doing that. We were working with one today that the place is in immaculate condition. It's just the fact that there are so many of them, which is why staff is making the conclusion of blight and disruption. The current ordinance does provide very little in the way of protections. There are some small setback requirements between these uses and residential, and it's really 20 feet and a type B landscape buffer required, but we wanted to evaluate some additional changes. So and it's, as I mentioned, currently it's grouped under one umbrella. So a gas station is reviewed the same way as a car wash is reviewed the same way as a mechanic. So staff looked at many other jurisdictions' regulations, but chose to mirror some of the regulations from the Royal Oak zoning code. This is not an exact copy. What this does is it actually is taking some of the good parts, some of it's customized a little bit, some of it we actually wanted to make it a little more fair for both sides. But we felt that it was clear and reasonable regulations. So this proposal tonight breaks this use up into 3 distinct categories. So this would essentially instead of bifurcate, it would trifurcate into 3 different land uses, and they'd be evaluated differently. So one for gas stations, one for auto mechanics and tire shops, the other one for car washes. So I'm going to go through some of the regulations, and I'm not going to read this verbatim, but I'm going to try to at least summarize each of these points. The gas stations are first. So right now, this is... You are going to be required a Type A Option 1 buffer when adjacent to residential. What does that mean? You have to put a wall and landscaping up. So we wanted to make sure that that was consistent for any new gas station in the city. This change requires that wall, and it does increase the number of trees to 2 per 100 feet in addition to that screening wall. The trees actually can grow much taller than the wall can. It really provides 2 layers of coverage. Gas stations, petroleum pumps must be located 30 feet from a property line. Filling stations or gas stations are required to be on a Type A street, which is defined as an ordinance with traffic volumes exceeding 15,000 cars a day. So this is keeping this off of the side streets. As an example, Johnson Street would not be allowed to have a gas station on it. So just for some perspective. While these will be near neighborhoods, it will not encroach into the neighborhoods as part of that. Staff is proposing that if you have 10 pumps or more, and this is any new station, you are required 1 EV charging station. This is just an example image. I use something that is not in the Michigan market, but Amoco is not coming here. This is just an example of, it's not a, but just as an example, I just wanted to provide a stock photo of a gas station. But retail displays for the filling station. So if you're selling something that is located outside the building, it should be within 8 feet of the principal building. Should not be littering out by the road or whatnot. We really want to keep that close to the building itself, and just to reduce the amount of clutter. Broadcasting of media off-site shall be prohibited. Now, if there's something on site that is very soft, that's okay. But we wanted to make sure that music and other announcements were not permeating off-site. This is not a decibel level. It cannot be heard from off-site. Applicants for new gas stations are required to do truck turn analysis. We just wanted to make sure that they provided this at a site plan level, that there really was safe navigability for the site. Now, dumpster trucks, you're going to be required to show that. Now, the fire department does have discretion. At their discretion, sometimes they feel comfortable parking their vehicles on the street, and it just depends on the situation. So they may be required to do a fire truck turn radius, but that is up to the fire department solely. So next has to do with service stations. This is your auto mechanics and also tire shops. Service stations also will be required to be on a Type A street. Again, that is 15,000 cars. And we are no longer allowing this to be in the C1 district, which is a special exception. These are, C1 is on Orchard Lake and some properties on West Huron and Auburn that are more, they are thoroughfares, but they're more meant to complement the adjacent neighborhoods. This service stations, while they have a practicality for people, we want to make sure that the impacts do not impact the adjacent residential properties. So the thing about it is, if it's in a C3 or C4 district, it requires a special exception. But you can have, if you are looking to locate a service station in those zoning districts, you can have no more than 3 within a mile. And that's a mile the way the bird flies. If you're in an industrial zone, M1 or M2, that does not apply. You can site there. But if it's on a C3 or C4 and there's already several service stations within a mile, you would not be able to even apply to Planning Commission. Again, we just wanted to make sure the clustering was, if there were a bunch of these, that they were happening in industrial zones, not in commercial corridors. Overhead doors will remain to be required closed at times, except when necessary for ventilation, like when it's 90 degrees, and not directly facing a residential property, just to make sure that those sound, noise, fume impacts don't impact residential properties. The next one is outdoor storage of vehicles is limited to 3 per indoor stall. And let me explain this. So if you have 3 bays, the most vehicles you can park overnight is 9. If you have 2 bays, the most you can park outside is 6. We want to make sure that you're not storing a cluster of vehicles that are there for months upon end. This is really intended to reduce the concentration of impaired vehicles on stored properties and, allowing operators enough leeway to continue their operations effectively. Number 4, hours of operations for service stations. And number 5, when adjacent to residential properties, there is a type A option 1 buffer. That masonry screening wall and the 2 deciduous trees per 100 feet is required. So the last is your car washes. Again, must be on an A street, but differently than the other 2, it may not be on adjacent to a residential property. So, while car washes don't have massive impacts, sometimes they get a lot of high demand where you have a lot of vehicles coming by, so you might get fumes. And I know from another jurisdiction I used to work and live in that sometimes if you live across the street, you're constantly hearing noise, the dryers, things like that. It could be near residential, it just cannot be adjacent to residential. All washing activities must occur within a building. Vacuuming may only occur on the portion of the property furthest from the nearest residential property, just to cut down on the noise pollution impacting city residents. Self-service washes are required to install permanent signage at ingress and egress locations for hours of operation and contact information for the owner. All stacking lanes for vehicles must be on site to reduce the incidence of vehicle queuing spilling out into the city streets. So these city-initiated zoning text amendments for automobile service stations are drafted to react to public concerns relative to each use. In staff's assessment, these regulations are needed to prohibit such uses from being public nuisances and allowing other commercial properties to be developed in the city. We don't want streets to have just vehicle service stations and gas stations. We would like to see a mix for a healthy corridor, healthy neighborhood, et cetera. Dividing the uses into 3 subcategories is consistent with how most other communities regulate these automobile services, and the focus on these regulations is protecting existing residents from impacts from these automobile land uses. So Planning Commission is a recommending body for the final decision. Staff recommends approval of these text amendments at tonight's meeting. The last thing I want to mention, just for procedural, is that I believe in November, City Council did hold a generic public hearing for the moratorium. And I don't know that a lot was spoken. A lot of feedback was received. I know there were a lot of comments. I don't know that staff received a lot of feedback from that public hearing. A lot of it had to do with just kind of questions and whatnot. But I think I did want to say that there was a public hearing at the City Council meeting for this. And I do want to thank Corey Christensen and the Kelly firm for putting a lot of legwork in on this ordinance. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Commissioner Duval, do you have any questions for staff? No. Commissioner McGinnis.
I want to thank you for all the hard work that went into it. And I know it's a collaborative effort, but it was too broad, too vague, it needed to be more fleshed out from what we currently have on the books. So I'm grateful for us to be able to go more in detail and see what works right.
Commissioner Shepard.
Thank you. We had no teeth before, so this helps. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Sinclair.
Same, Mark. I think it's great.
And Commissioner Northcross.
I think this is really a step forward. Just a couple of questions. Let's see. Now, we're regulating the relative location of the service items, the automotive service operations, but we're not regulating the relative location of gas stations. And it appears we're starting to see a proliferation of gas stations throughout the city. I don't know what's bringing that about, but we are seeing quite a few gas stations all over the place. And, you know, on one hand, it does promote some competition, but on the other hand, that's how many gas stations do you need in one location? So I'm just wondering, while we're regulating the automotive services, why not also the gas stations? And in speaking of gas stations too,
I believe Mark.
Commissioner Northcross can finish, actually. I'm sorry, yeah.
and in speaking to the gas stations, what about a restriction for the sale of leaded gasoline? I don't know if that's even stated right now. Most cars are using unleaded gasoline, but I think there's still one or two areas that might be selling leaded gasoline, especially for the older cars that need the high octane.
So regarding the gas stations, it was definitely a consideration of staff of the number of them. And, you know, when we were looking at the city, they're actually pretty uniform throughout the city when it comes to the thoroughfares. One of the things that I think we had a concern about placing restrictions. Now, some of the locations, we're really restricting it to type A streets, your Woodwards, your Main Street thoroughfares. But the competition is good. But we also wanted to consider that while we have a few grocery stores in the city, some people say we don't. We do have Carnival Market. There's actually one on Perry Street. There's not a lot. We do have some food deserts in the city, and in lieu of shopping or of grocery store, a convenience store is a nice resource for people. You know, and so we didn't want to get to a point that we were limiting access to food. Now, some convenience stores have better things than others, but we didn't feel that limiting it was not something we thought that was appropriate. We were kind of weighing both sides of that, and you know, there are a lot of small gas stations. It's not like we're loaded with these mega gas stations that you might see as you travel across the country. And I think that it kind of lends to the small business attitude of the Pontiac area. So we did not do that.
If I may jump in, we did reduce the area it is permitted from the current requirements down to now it's only allowed on a type A street.
Yep.
So it's not as necessarily restrictive as maybe service stations. We did think about restricting it, and we limited it to those more high-intensity streets.
In terms of leaded gasoline, really, we're focused more on the state. I mean, as a city, we're not regulating, you know, lead gasoline, and we would rely on state and federal guidelines for that. But I don't believe you could actually open a leaded gasoline store other than at a site like M1. Like it would not be possible to do that, I think, under those guidelines. Mm-hmm. So.
And I do applaud you. There is a section in here, I believe it's section M on page 55, which talks about all additional primary or accessory uses on the same parcel must meet all requirements of the city zoning ordinances for such uses.
Yep.
You know, we're missing that in a number of areas. I mean, that's really a step forward because we've, in our site plan review process, we skip right over section, what is it, section, was that 4.4 is the performance section, that we don't really explicitly require developers to come in with projects that will meet all of our ordinances. And I think they put the onus on you as the planning manager and your staff to make a best guess. And sometimes the different technologies and the different questions that are coming in may be beyond your preview, your ability to delve into it. And I'm really glad to see that we're starting to make a move to have the developers own their projects, to make sure that they're meeting the performance requirements of the city, all of the zoning requirements that we have in the city. I think that's good to do that up front, because I think a lot of developers, if they knew up front, they would make sure they would go through that additional steps to one, consider it, and two, be able to demonstrate that their designs will meet those areas. But us not requiring that, that we do meet all of these zoning ordinances, I think can really cause us some trouble down the road, especially as our densities are increasing, as we just saw with this last project where we're bringing in, we're taking some land that's been dormant for a while, and now we're putting this big project on it. How do we make sure we have the specs? How do we make sure we have the requirements in place where as we talk to the developer and the developer talks to us, we're saying the same language and at the same time asking the questions that will ensure the residents in the city, and especially those right around those developments, are protected and end up with something that adds value to them as well. So I'm glad to see Section M in here. That was one of the things I was going to ask about. And I think you even go a little further when you talk about the wash services. You actually say they have to demonstrate. I think that was in the wash services, isn't it? Isn't there a section in the wash services about they have to actually demonstrate that they meet all the ordinances, particularly that of noise? But
And I would like to expand on that. Thank you for noticing that. So if you have a car wash and a gas station, as an example, you'd have to follow the regulations of both. I did want to point out, it wasn't in the presentation, the only zoning district, we did put something in there that in the IP1 district, which is industrial park, we only have a few of those in the city. Those are more, you have nice lined streets, but you have big manufacturers and stuff like that. It does allow, as an accessory use, gas stations, car washes, and service stations as an accessory use. It has to be accessory for that business. And Amazon's a different zone, but like if Amazon wants a gas station, it's really an accessory use to what their main purpose is. That's just an example. We just wanted to provide that flexibility. But all other zoning districts, if it's in an industrial zone, you'd be able to move forward with both uses, but you'd have to comply with the code when you're at the site plan level or you're amending your site plan to add that on. So we just thought it was good to provide that clarity.
I do have one other question. What happens when a gas station goes out of business? Who's responsible for the cleanup and the decommission of that gas station?
And Jake, I don't know if you're aware of this. My assumption is that there are certain environmental things through Eagle. In my time in Ohio, the EPA down there was like Eagle, and there are certain requirements for that site that really rely on the property owner to comply with. Do you have any knowledge of those requirements when a gas station closes and you have the remaining tanks and possible pollution that is there?
Yes, thank you, Mark. I'm not exactly sure particularly for gas stations, but I know a lot of other industrial uses and similar types of things do not just have EPA, but Eagle requirements from the state of Michigan that require pretty stringent, especially when you're changing the use to make sure that it's all up to code for it. And during their use, for example, I know that there was a leaded versus unleaded question too that is generally pretty closely watched by the state. Yeah. And the federal government, but to a more closer attention to here, the state.
Yeah. And that also goes to my concern about how many gas stations we let in, because 50 years down the road, we're going to be looking at taking them out. Maybe even 10 years down the road, we'll have to look at taking them out. And who pays and how do we do that? We're trying to get to a more walkable city, and that internal combustion engine is really under assault. I don't care what the folks in Washington are saying, that they're not going to phase out like overnight, but at the same time, we're starting to see we're going to see some rises of alternative type of power plants and also alternative ways of transportation that we maybe don't want to load up on gas stations right now. So just my comments. Other than that, I think this is a good step forward. We possibly, again, speaking towards some of the changes in transportation, may want to even break out a fourth type of category in the EV categories. But, you know, EV charging is still kind of up in the air, you know. But it will eventually settle down probably in the next 2 to 3 years. It will be there and be kind of reliable. So that may create a whole nother area of category rather that we want to look at to promote and push certain things. So thank you. Good job.
Commissioner Sinclair, you had a quick question.
I had a quick question, Mark. Is the sale of automobiles regulated in auto service facilities?
Can you repeat the question? So what is the automobile service? Is that the question, regulated within automobile sales?
Can they sell autos
No.
at service facilities?
Those would be separate land uses. We're, Corey and I have been working through this. Could someone set up 2 different businesses? Yeah, but they would need to follow both requirements.
For clarity, auto sales is considered outdoor retail in our ordinance specifically, and so it has to follow the rules of outdoor retail. It is not affected by this ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then I just want to say that I really like this text amendment and all the changes you guys are proposing. Just a quick clarifying question that it'll seem nitpicky, but I've run into this issue many times in other ordinances. When you're talking about the gas stations and the setbacks for pumps, are you talking about the pumps, the pump islands, or the pump canopy?
The way it's worded, I believe it would be from the actual pump station itself. And that maybe not the curb of the island, but where the actual pump device is.
Okay.
Dispenser, yeah, thank you.
The tower itself is where we would start the measurement.
Gotcha, because I know that canopies can sometimes extend up to like 10, 15 feet past where the actual pumps begin.
Yep.
So just wanted to bring that up in case there was any clarification with that needed. But okay, that's all I had. And this is a public hearing, so if anyone in the audience would like to speak on this zoning text amendment, you will have 2 minutes each to do so. Please state your name and your address if you have any comments, and with that, I'll open up the public hearing. And it doesn't look like we have any takers, so I'm gonna. Yes.
Fast enough.
Could you turn on the microphone, please?
The button on the right.
Okay, is that it? Okay, so let's do some correction here. And I have sit in planning for a while, and we are talking about this particular issue, okay? But it has to do with gathering of a lot of issues. I have sit in planning, and I have heard and seen so many takeaway information, put in its place information, and not giving the whole truth information. Mr. Norcross, you made a comment that high-end gas is not one of the factors to say that it's a necessity of basically saying that people are not using it any longer. I beg your correction. I have 4 vehicles, and all of them have to have premium gas in them. And every BMW, Mercedes, these high-end trucks have to have high-end gas, okay? And then diesels. Then there's other things you present. When this investor come here, they're presenting this if, especially on Baldwin, the sale of vehicles are more greater than high. And I say that because the parking lot, I have seen people put their vehicles there and say, for sale. So to say that's not a possibility of a sale of a vehicle being out there, that's not true either. So the concern is that in the rezoning to get these people, investors, qualified, not to say that any of their ideas are wrong. His concept is not wrong, not by a long shot. It's just the location and the timing is wrong for the progress for the city of Pontiac. You're going backwards and making that area more congested after you cleaned it up. Do it kind of make sense to what I'm trying to say to you guys? It's overcrowded now with the gas station, and the gas stations are not being maintained. But you ask a question that when the gas station go under, who's responsible? Now, if I'm a business person, I let that gas station go back and I don't pay my bills, it go foreclosure. Foreclosure go to the city's responsibility to make sure that everybody do what they have to do. If that's time.
Okay, and it doesn't look like there was anyone else who wanted to talk on that.
I'll just say something.
All right.
Is there anything, you have my information, Mike Davish again. Is there anything related to closed down gas stations? I purchased a closed down gas station that I'm looking to reopen. And in the city of Detroit, and I do a lot of developments, they have in their ordinance to where if it was an existing gas station and you want to reopen the gas station, that because someone's made the initial investment and the tanks are there and the canopy is there and there's a great infrastructure there to where they make an exception. But I looked over the ordinance. This particular gas station, I believe, would pass everything there. But that just for the future of your ordinance to coincide with other city ordinances, they usually make exceptions for closed down gas stations to be allowed to reopen if the infrastructure is there. That's just a thought for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
To answer that, or I'll let you, if you want to close the public hearing.
Yeah. All right, with that, I'll close public hearing.
So once a site, like a gas station, is vacant for 6 months, many of those legal nonconformities actually go away. However, so a gas station could still open up, but there would be requirements from the new ordinance that would apply. One example of this is there's going to have to be some green space put in, between the gas station and the road. There could be a wall that's required to be put up. So we'll work through that in that situation. I'm not aware of any legal nonconformities in terms of setbacks because the 30-foot gas station setback actually currently exists today. We just wanted to clarify that as part of this. So I think we're okay from that end, but I believe that they're going to have to comply with the current code if it's reopened.
Thank you.
And if I may.
Is it relevant?
Well, this goes to the octane, the higher octane fuels.
We don't need to discuss
That's
that.
not relevant to this
They
zoning text.
are not leaded fuels. You can get the octane without the lead.
Yes, we need to vote recommending approval or not recommending approval. So we could take a motion at this time.
Do we have motions?
So we still need a motion, correct?
Yeah. Yes, we need a motion.
We don't have a motion screen.
We don't? Is that what you're looking for? Yeah. Come on, Corey, you're perfect.
It would just be a simple motion to recommend approval or a simple motion to recommend denial.
I make a motion to approve the automotive services text amendment at this meeting.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Perfect. All right. Motion passes. And with that, our next item on the agenda is public comment. This will run very similar to the public hearings we've just had, except where before you were restricted to only talking about the applications we are currently on. For the public comment, you may speak on any topic you'd like for 2 minutes, one time each. With that, I'll open up public comment.
Is that okay? Okay, so the continuation of the conversation that we have. Pontiac, let's look at the whole picture in all four corners of Pontiac, east, south, west, and north. It was divided. Now you're trying to bring it together. In planning, you do these things. Now, rezoning is an important factor in order to make any city, whether it's Pontiac, Birmingham, Bloomfield, anywhere. The zoning department is the most important department. But in Pontiac, we seem to get what the other cities don't want. So investors come in here to rezone. Now, Pontiac General Hospital, and let's use that as an example, has been there since I was born in Pontiac General Hospital. And if I'm 70 years old, was born there, you can tell how long it's been there, okay? So with that being said, you get the surrounding homes around it. Now, traffic was there, but it also was leaving at a certain time. So then the city become time go by, the city become the responsibility of the property. But guess who does not maintain the property? The city. So you're looking at blight. Who caused this blight? The city. Who choose not to keep the upkeep of all this property? The city. Who follow along with what the city is doing? Investors. So then you look at a whole lot of junk. So investors come in and say, oh, I can beautify it. But on that corner, you have just on Green Street, you have an empty apartment building that's been sitting there forever. On the side of the parking lot that this man want to build on, you have a medical building that's sitting there forever. You have, want me to stop? You want me to stop?
You can finish your thought if you'd like, but
oh, okay.
Yeah, just keep it brief.
Okay. But the point I'm really trying to make, you rezone environment that the city themselves, as Pontiac, has let go. So you want to clean up an eyesore that the city created by going through the investors instead of going through the city and their responsibility.
Doesn't look like we have any more comments, so with that, I'm going to close public comment. And we will move on to our final application of the evening. This is a final site plan review, SPR 24-031, for 805 Baldwin Avenue. That we can have our staff report.
Thank you. So this is a case that you have seen a few times now over the last year. They originally came to you, I believe it was July 10th, to get preliminary site plan approval. At that time, the board moved to approve with several conditions, 7 or 8. One of those conditions was that final site plan approval would have to come back to this board. Typically, final site plan is reviewed and approved by city staff. What we do at that time is ensure that all the conditions imposed by the various boards who came prior have all been met with. And once all the conditions have been met, we issue a final approval. But this board has requested that final approval authority rest with them. So we are bringing it back to you. It also came forward, I believe, in October for a special exception to allow for the gas station. So they've had a preliminary, they've had a special exception, and now is final. The applicant is proposing an automobile filling station with a convenience store, office space, and pharmacy. John Guma and Jason Kagi, the applicants, successfully petitioned for 2 variances on March 18th, 2024, which were approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals. These were a 0-foot setback in the side yard, the north side facing Merrimack, and a 4-foot 7-inch setback in the rear yard being the west side for a commercial kitchen. The applicant successfully received preliminary site plan approval from the Planning Commission on July 10th, 2024. This approval had 7 conditions associated. The applicants successfully received special exception approval for fuel pumps on November 6, 2024, and I believe there were 3 conditions associated with that. The property is zoned C1, local business district, and it must maintain a 20-foot minimum setback from the rear lot line. Sorry, that's not true. They had a variance. The property is uniquely situated with frontages on 3 streets, Baldwin Avenue from the front, Merrimack Street on the side, and South Merrimack Street to the rear. A canopy with 3 fuel pumps is proposed, and staff recommends approval of the requested final site plan with 4 conditions. So first, to give you an overview, this is an aerial. It shows you how the property is uniquely situated with road frontage on 3 sides, a neighborhood to the rear. My pointer is You can see that, right? This line? Okay. To the south, this has actually been combined. If you recall from our previous discussions at site plan review, there was lots of discussions about the required setback for the canopy. That is no longer an issue because they have combined both parcels into one large parcel. There is a home over here. It's kind of cut off. This person is located directly adjacent. Otherwise, all residences are across the street. And this is where it sits within our zoning map. Most properties along Baldwin Avenue are zoned some form of commercial. This side of the street is C1. You can see the other side of the street is more dense at C3 and with R2 duplex behind it. This side of the street, the west side, C1, and then behind it, R1 single family residential. This is the site plan as proposed. You can see the parking lot extends now to the south a little bit. This was presented to you before, but there used to be a property line right here. That is no longer the case. They have combined. The canopy is located here with 3 pumps or towers. Parking is along the front of the building and a little bit close to Baldwin. I've highlighted in red the additions that are proposed to the existing building. This is the proposed facade. They're proposing an enhancement to the aesthetics of the building, and with the addition, they're going to be proposing a new door on the kind of north side of the building. So now going through the conditions one by one. The first condition, no grass parking is permitted on or off site. The site plans have been revised to address this concern. Sheet A1 contains a note that reads, no grass parking is permitted on or off site. 2, mechanical equipment needs to be shielded from the public right-of-way. The site plans have been revised to address this concern. A statement was added to sheet A5 that reads, there will be no mechanical equipment visible from the public right-of-way. Furthermore, details on the dumpster screening have been provided. 3, when final site plans are resubmitted, the 6,195 square foot expansion on the adjacent property must be removed. Ensure that the revised site plans accurately reflect this change. If you recall, originally, the preliminary site plans that were brought forward to you had a future development indicated to the south. We asked that they remove that and only request what they're actually requesting at this time, no future requests. So they've struck that and kept the site plans to just what they're asking for at this time. 4, landscaping improvements must be implemented as follows. A minimum of 2 arborvitae at the northwest corner and 2 canopy trees at the southwest corner in the designated landscaping areas. Ensure that all new plantings are drought resistant and suitable for the local climate. The plans have been revised to indicate 3 arborvitae at the northwest corner of the property, 2 canopy trees at the southwest corner. The 4 species proposed are Japanese, I'm going to have trouble pronouncing these, barberry, tulip tree, ironwood, and emerald green. That was actually pretty easy. All 4 of which are suitable for the Michigan climate, and all but the tulip are drought resistant. Staff's research indicates the tulip tree is low to moderately drought resistant. However, its resistance improves once it has been established.
You didn't finish the emerald green.
I didn't?
Description or name?
Oh, arborvitae. Thank you. It was testing me. 5, street trees must be planted along the Baldwin property frontage according to the zoning code for landscape frontage. The plans have been revised to provide for 2 street trees along Baldwin Avenue. 6, repave the rear concrete and curb apron. This will be checked at the time of final inspection and should be kept as a condition of final site plan approval. And now for the special exception conditions. 1, all conditions of the preliminary site plan must be followed and incorporated into the final site plan, which will be reviewed by the Planning Commission at a future Planning Commission date. All conditions of the preliminary site plan approval are incorporated into the final plans. 2, a required stormwater pretreatment plan shall be approved by the City of Pontiac. Also 3, a hazardous materials mitigation plan will be approved by the Fire Marshal. These should be retained as conditions of approval. These are final documents that will be submitted to staff when they proceed to the next step. And then further review, we received some comments, some concerns that were emailed to staff directly. So I wish to address those at this time. So with further staff's review, there does appear to be inconsistency between the floor plans, elevations, and site plans in terms of where exit and entry doors are located. This should be addressed as a condition of approval. As you can see on the left side here, the door is shown facing west. However, on the elevations, the door is shown facing north. We just need consistency across the plans. So we recommend as a condition of approval that the site plans be revised to show consistent entrances and exits. Next, concern was raised to staff about the possible need for a retaining wall where the new addition is proposed. We did go back and double check this. It was not a condition of approval, and so that's why it's not addressed in the condition slides. But staff does defer to the city engineer on grading matters. The engineer's report does not identify any concerns with retaining the proposed expansion. The report states the project engineer has provided a topographic survey that is acceptable for this review. Furthermore, it concludes, based on our review and the above review comments, we find the plans acceptable for final site plan purposes only. If the site plan is recommended for approval by the City of Pontiac, engineering plans shall be submitted to the City of Pontiac for a more detailed review and approval before permits are issued and construction can commence. Procedurally, what that means is if they at that time tell us a retaining wall or something else is required, they would then be kicked back and required to get an amended site plan. Standards of approval. First, in terms of circulation, staff feels the site seems sufficient for traffic and pedestrian circulation. There are 2 access drives, one off Baldwin Avenue and another on Merrimack Street. In terms of buildings, the current structure does not impact adjacent properties adversely. Natural features, there are no existing natural features on site in need of preservation. Layout and screening, mechanical equipment is proposed to be shielded. In compliance with the zoning ordinance, the site plans comply with the zoning ordinance. With that, staff recommends the following conditions. 1, site will be developed in compliance with the approved site plans. 2, stormwater pretreatment plan must be reviewed and approved by the city engineer. 3, hazardous materials mitigation plan must be reviewed and approved by the fire marshal. And 4, the plan shall be revised to provide a consistency in terms of entrance and exit locations. And with that, we have sample motions for your use.
All right, thank you, Corey. Do we have any questions for staff at this time? Yes, Chris.
The fuel trucks, I think we had a discussion on that. I wasn't clear of I didn't remember the outcome of how the fuel trucks are going to move. And secondly, is there a standard layout for fuel pumps in terms of the separation between the pumps, rows, columns of pumps, so that the cars can fit in between them and people walk back and forth? I was trying to figure out exactly how that worked on this one.
So much of this is why we are bringing forward this ordinance to add more teeth, because we don't have a lot of rules on the books addressing these concerns. So the only requirement for pumps location-wise in the current ordinance is 30 feet from the property line. We also require the canopy to meet the ordinance requirements for structures, so it can't be within 10 feet of another structure. But that's it in terms of what we have on the books that we can really regulate. In terms of the truck navigation, we have had it reviewed by the city engineer, who felt it was suitable.
Okay. And how about I know someone was saying that the pedestrian movement on the site, it's hard, I'm not, I was trying to look at that site and then look at other sites. It seems like these pumps are a little closer together than what they are on other sites. And then we have that area where the building sits, and then cars would have to drive between the pumps and the building. And I was saying, wow. And then the spacing between the cars at a pump, I was trying to scale that off, and I said, there's probably a standard. And if it meets the standard, let it go. But I wasn't sure what that standard is. And did someone use a standard did they apply a standard in looking at those pump locations and relative cars and movement and stuff?
So again, the ordinance is very limited in this regard, so there was very little we could do. We did check to make sure that 2 cars could be adjacent to each other between the pumps, but other than that, there's nothing in the ordinance we can cite as a reason to push them apart.
Well, I was just wondering if there's maybe like industry standards or architectural standards.
That might be a better question for the applicant.
Yeah.
Okay, good, thank you.
Yes, Sue.
Corey, can you elaborate? I just want to make sure I understand, because I think one of the reasons why this came back for final site plan approval is Commissioner Parlow and myself wanted to see the retaining wall in the back because there's a significant grade difference. So are you saying that if a retaining wall is needed, based on the city engineer's opinion, it would come back to us?
No, it would most likely come back to city planning staff for their approval. It would only kick back to the Planning Commission if it was directly placed in a condition or if the changes proposed were significant. But the addition of one retaining wall would not constitute a significant change. It would be the necessary change to meet the conditions of the engineer, and so staff would conduct that review.
Okay, I just want to add, too, that we didn't add that as a condition.
I
It was-
double-checked.
We mentioned it, but we did not add that condition for the applicant, so I just
Yep.
want to make sure I clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. All right, if we could have our applicants come forward, thank you for your patience. If you'd like to add anything beyond what the staff presentation showed, any other additional information or context, now's the time to do that.
Good evening. My name is John Guma. We're responsible for providing these drawings. Really not much more to say. This is our fourth run. I think we've accommodated all your recommendations and suggestions and continue to moving forward as well. I'm here to ask you if you have any questions.
All right, thank you.
The
Commissioner
door.
Duval, do you have any questions?
The door. Do you know if is it going to be on the west or north side?
That one. Yeah, it's going to be on the drawing on the right-hand side is the correct one.
Okay.
So it'll be on the north side.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Duval, do you have any questions for our applicant?
No, I think they've come a long way. I'm pretty satisfied with everything. I was concerned about how close the pumps were. How many pumps do you expect to have?
So 3 dispensers. So we did take in to the commissioner. We did.
Microphone, please.
It's not turned out as the bottom.
No.
Right, there you go.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
So we did obviously take in consideration, sir, with 2 cars next to each other. It's pretty much what Corrigan recommended as a standard is what they do. Also, as far as the traffic coming in and out off of Baldwin, we've got, because we expanded that.
Jason, I asked the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. What was your question?
I'm just messing with you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Listen, I'm over here sweating already, man.
I know.
He's got me, must take my coat off. So as far as the traffic coming in and out, it won't be necessary unless they're pumping to go into the pumps. They can come on the south side of the pumps and enter into the front parking lot. To answer your questions. Did you have a question, seriously?
No, I'm good. I'm just,
Okay.
I welcome the expansion. I think it's, and I will tell you personally that I've come at that Baldwin-Montcalm intersection many times, and I'm like, I just missed the gas station, and I'm wanting something right there. And so for my personal use, I think it's, I'm not over there a lot, but when I am, I somehow always miss that gas station. But I think it's fine, and you've done everything we've asked you to do, so thank you.
Thank you. And then just want to say, between all of you, you guys ask a lot of questions, and you guys are really, really into detail with every single project. So my hat off to you guys, seriously. So, any other questions for us?
Commissioner McGinnis.
Thank you, and thank you for continuing to pursue this towards the completion. To carry on Commissioner Duval's question, so we've got 3 pump stations, but that means basically 6 opportunities for vehicles, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the thorough nature in which you've worked to rise to all the different conditions and requirements of the special exceptions, because it's made it a stronger site plan, a stronger proposal, and it'll make a stronger outcome for your business, but also for the Baldwin corridor, which deserves enhancement, deserves to be more thriving and beautiful, and that would benefit you, benefit your customers, benefit the neighbors nearby. And although this is unrelated, north of your site, there's a lot of dormant parking lot, et cetera, and so there's a lot of conversations happening about how the former GM Fiero plant parking lot might be able to have a new lease on life as well. which would be, of course, more customers or clients for this gas station. But so much of the Baldwin corridor needs some love, some vitality, and so thank you for being active, open, engaging a destination, and working to advance to make that even more so.
Thank you, Mike.
Commissioner Shepard.
No questions. Thanks for what you're doing. So I think
Thank
we've
you, sir.
put you through all the paces. So
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Commissioner Sinclair.
I got to make you sweat a little more.
Hold on.
It's her birthday month. Let her have.
Happy belated birthday.
Thank you. I think you answered this question I asked last time, I'm pretty sure. Because you're doing that, the restaurant in the back or the food service, food prep, whatever, where are they bringing the goods in? Are they bringing them in through the front or the side?
As of right now, it's going to be from the side. The back.
The north side?
On no.
The west
Gonna be
side.
on the north.
No, it's going to be in the west.
Honestly, I haven't implemented which way the goods will go. As of right now, they're coming in through the front door, which we have no issues at all. All deliveries are done early in the morning. I have a set time with majority of the distributors, so they're there before kind of, as soon as we open.
My only concern is if you use Merrimack and you park a truck there, when you're coming around that corner, because you've been granted a zero setback back there, it's kind of,
They definitely won't be parking on Merrimack. I can guarantee you that.
we're all good then.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Yep.
Commissioner Northcross.
Yeah, just refresh my memory. Where will the fuel truck park to drop fuel? And how will it get in?
On the south side, we'll be entering in off of Baldwin.
Coming in off of Baldwin, and
And then they would loop, coming off of Baldwin and hang a right, like kind of heading north, right? Is that what I'm looking at?
So the fueling truck would sit here or here, and the tanks are going to be near here. So the truck would can either pull in, turn around, and sit here, and then unload, and then just exits.
Okay. Okay.
And that's done while they're closed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. I don't really, actually, no, one question. The food truck that's there, is that moving?
I'm trying to actually make him a part of the restaurant that we're doing, honestly. So hopefully it'll work out between us, and he's pretty excited about it. So we haven't set anything in stone yet, but he's definitely invited to come in and run it, or kind of work it or partner up or something like that.
Love to hear it. I love that food truck. So that's the only question I had.
I did
yes.
have one more. I'm sorry. There was a question about auto sales on your lot, and I think at one point someone said there was a car for sale. These are not your cars. This is
No.
right. This is somebody who said, "Can I park my car here to sell?" And
No, not even. I don't
Okay.
let anybody do that.
Okay.
I know the food truck guy, he used to commute back and forth. He didn't want to move his truck every time, so he didn't leave it there overnight. He'd leave his employees and then just commute back and forth to work and home, pick up his kids. So that was his vehicle. It was a pickup.
Okay.
And he did, it was registered, but he was selling it at the same time.
What's the
So-
food on the food truck? What kind of food is it?
Tacos.
Okay, cool. Good to know.
All right. Well, I think we're ready for a motion.
I move to approve the requested site plan for an expansion and addition of fuel pumps at 805 Baldwin Avenue based on the findings of fact identified in the staff report and with the four conditions outlined in the staff report.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion passes. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thanks, guys.
Mayor, your seat's going to be hard to fill.
Please no discussion of elections here. It's been a hot topic tonight. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
All right. So from there, we're going to move into new business, and the only item on the agenda for that is our 2024 annual report.
It's that time of year again. Let's get it loaded up.
Yep.
I got them.
So I don't know if this was always done. We definitely did it last year, and we're doing it again this year. This is a requirement by the state. It's actually in the Zoning or Planning Enabling Act. You are required to compile a report of your activities over the last year and submit it to City Council. So staff has gone ahead and provided you with that report, and our recommendation to you tonight is that you move it on to City Council. So this is actually the act that requires it. It states, a planning commission shall make an annual written report to the legislative body concerning its operations and the status of planning activities, including recommendations regarding actions by the legislative body related to planning and development. This report was prepared to relay information to other boards, commissions, staff, and the governing body in hopes to better illustrate the work done by the Planning Commission. This report should be used as a tool to prepare for the upcoming year in terms of priorities, possible issues, and budgeting. So you have the report in front of you. It was distributed in your packet, so I'm not going to go too in-depth, but I thought it would be fun to kind of do some comparison to how you changed from 2023. So in 2024, the Planning Commission met 14 times. This was actually one less than in 23. There were 9 rezoning cases heard in 2024. This is 1 less than in 23. There were 6 text amendments heard in 24. Again, 1 less than in 23. But here's where you made it up. There were 40 cases reviewed. Site plans and special exceptions in 2024. This is 17 more than in 2023. Some of this is because cases were postponed, in which case they're double counted because you've heard them twice. But you have been approving more developments. And I will just editorialize a bit here. The text amendments cases you heard in 24 were more intricate and involved than in 23. So even though it was 1 less, it was a lot more work. Moving on, there were 2 trainings conducted in 2024. This is 1 more than in 23. And in addition to this, the Planning Commission took on master plan update responsibilities in 2024 that were not asked of the Commission in 23. And so with that, our recommendation to you is a simple motion to forward the report to City Council for its consideration.
Take a motion.
I make a motion to forward this report on to the City Council.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion.
And if I can, real quickly, this is an excellent document for being able to do research. You know, as we have, there are just certain site plans and certain other projects that, for me, have set the benchmark for all other plans. And being able to quickly go through the archives, which are now online, pull those items up and compare has really been a help for me.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yes.
And based on the agenda review discussion I had with the mayor and deputy mayor this afternoon, the intent is for that presentation to happen February 18th at the next city council meeting, if you're available.
I believe I will be.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you for the Planning Commission for sending us that report.
Yes. All right. Next on the agenda is staff communications.
Hello. So I think real briefly, let's discuss what's gone through City Council recently. So last night, the zoning text amendment for marijuana LED lighting was approved. There was a zoning and text amendment for places of assembly. It went to second reading last night, but it was tabled from City Council, and we're going to be reviewing it with the Economic Development, Housing, and Planning Subcommittee meetings in the coming months. So that's not it's still moving forward, but it may be a month or so before that actually comes back. City Council did pass the master plan last night. Actually, let me just say this. 43 Columbia was also rezoning the former Owens School. The applicant has not gone to City Council yet and has retained a consultant and is hoping to come forward in March. So that application has not made its way to City Council yet. Lastly, City Council did adopt the resolution adopting the draft master plan and really starting the 63-day minimum public input process. So on the screen is our wonderful website, visionpontiac.com. And if you scroll down a little bit, you can view the draft plan and you can also submit content. I'm going to take this over here. This is a wonderful document to review. Now, you have until April 8th as planning commission members, as city council members, as community members, to provide input on this draft plan. Once April 8th happens and it gets April 9th, we're actually going to stop public comment because that really allows McKenna to review all the comments, compare it with the plan process that has gone forward. Is this consistent? You know, if you're adding an additional partner or making a suggestion like you did, Commissioner Northcross, absolutely that can be amended. But they want to make sure that just because someone's mentioning, hey, let's do this, make sure that it aligns with everything else. But you have that ability up until April 8th. But starting April 9th, they're going to start reviewing the plan, and it is going to come back to Planning Commission on Wednesday, May 7th for a public hearing. That is the normal Planning Commission meeting time. We are going to allow a couple applications, so we're not going to call a special meeting. We're going to allow a couple applications that evening. However, you know, more than 2 or 3, we're probably going to call a special meeting later on in May for the remaining other planning items. Once it goes, Planning Commission makes a recommendation to City Council, it'll go forward to City Council with the resolution. I did want to just point out on the website, again, you can view the draft plan by clicking on the yellow bar, and then if you wanted to submit comment, there are 3 basic questions here. What do you like about the plan? You know, we definitely want feedback. We want, you know, suggestions, things like that. But we wanted to balance that with, you know, what is someone actually liking about the plan? What questions that maybe are not spelled out are in here? And I think that helps us in our communication. But number 3 is the key one. What comments, suggestion, or feedback do you have about this plan? These boxes look a little small, and I was a little concerned, but this is SurveyMonkey. If you put your mouse over the box, you can actually drag it and make it as big as you want to. So someone that is, you know, this is a very comprehensive document. Someone that's actually going through that, you know, you want to review what you're writing, that is the way to do it. It doesn't do that ahead of time, but you have the ability to make that box as big as you want to. So I just wanted to share that for some perspective. We did have a virtual webinar today. I would say that we're going to evaluate it. The McKenna started the presentation, and unfortunately, Mr. Jackson's computer crashed, and so here I am on the fly, no PowerPoint presentation going through, and just trying to assist people on how to get through there. We're gonna evaluate it tomorrow to see if that will be the webinar, if we need to do something to supplement that for everybody. We really appreciate the support here. I would say as Planning Commission members, though, you obviously want to evaluate this document, but it's really going to be the guiding principle for all plans, especially rezonings, after it's adopted. And so it's good to get some understanding. And when you look at individual sections, you may not understand why is the city going in this direction, but I've heard feedback from a few people that looking at the whole document really can assist with that. So please let me know if you've got questions, concerns. You know, I'd be happy to discuss with anybody about this process. A press release was put out today, so I'm hoping that, you know, the greater community really knows that this plan is available, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's in some media outlets in the next couple days as well. Thank you for your, you know, involvement on this plan, and I know many of you have attended meetings or done various things, so we really appreciate that support. The last thing I wanted to say is the March meeting we are anticipating. I think it's maybe 3 or 4 items, so nothing, no marathon thing. I did want to just leave this. What? So, well, actually, the deadline's passed. Yeah. The thing I would say is, so we're looking at, we have 2 mixed-use zoning districts. We have the residential unit plan development, or PURD, planned unit residential development, and we have the mixed-use district. And Corey and I have been kind of reviewing that, sometimes with people, sometimes ourselves. And one of the things we didn't realize is that it takes 25 acres to rezone something to either a residential plan unit development or a mixed-use development. And in a growing suburb or growing township, that is a reasonable request. It's a large enough area of land. You can get different things in there. It allows that flexibility. But in a place like Pontiac, no one has ever, we have a few mixed-use districts. No one has ever invoked the zoning district for a planned unit residential development. And that is, our 2014 master plan talks about flexibility, housing flexibility. The 2025 plan that is currently in draft talks about housing flexibility, but no one's able to invoke that. So we're evaluating, but we're looking forward to coming for a public hearing for a zoning text amendment for both zoning classifications to allow a smaller threshold. I don't want to say what that is. We're still evaluating, but it would make it a little bit more palatable to be used both for residential development and commercial development. Now, let me say this about these things. Let me talk about residential first. Really, what that does is it allows a developer to come in and develop some homes. They still have to follow the zoning standards, particularly on the periphery, but it gets them through it's a rezoning and site plan package at the same time and gets them through a process to Planning Commission and City Council, and there's a development agreement that normally goes to City Council as well. And it really provides them internal flexibility based on design standards. They may have reduced setbacks, but you see that within the application. I know that's not something this board has necessarily seen, and we will do our best to educate you through that process, but it is a tool that we want to evaluate because I think there are some redevelopment opportunities that may allow for some additional housing because it's very difficult to do that. 25 acres is very, very large right now. So, and there are times that, you still get to evaluate standards, and I'll share with you next month what our current standards are for those, what the entire sections are, so you get some understanding as well. We do have a rezoning, and we have a few other things. I don't have that off the top of my head, but I just want to prepare you for next month. So, have I missed anything?
Oh, hold on.
Oh, yeah.
Hold on, Chris. Thank you, Mark. Mike, was there any other updates from City Council, or did Mark cover them?
I think Manager Yandrick covered it well. I mean, there are a lot of things happening in Pontiac and in city government, but in terms of the planning aspect, I believe that covers it.
Okay, great.
If I may, there's one more thing I forgot to mention. So, the mayor mentioned this last night. MDOT is going through a plan process, just like we're doing in the city for the master plan. They're doing it for Woodward from Detroit to Pontiac. And this is a really good time for Pontiac residents, including Planning Commission members, to provide input on the long-term plan for Woodward for MDOT. And I would say that I know that there has been some concern with some of MDOT's previous proposals that, I've heard at council meetings both before and after I was here. This is an excellent time to give MDOT some direction. So when there's a proposal that comes forward maybe in 3 or 4 years, it aligns with some of that feedback from the community. So there are flyers in the back here, but there are 2 sessions in person at the Pleasant Ridge Community Center on Tuesday, February 18th. The afternoon session is from 12 to 2. The evening session is from 4 to 6. There also is a virtual open house on Thursday, February 20th from 4 to 6. So, Woodward is a very key thoroughfare for the city. It is a wonderful entryway to welcome people to Pontiac. What works in Ferndale and Royal Oak may not work up here, and that's why, they're doing this master plan process. There are different things that could be viable, and I was having an interesting conversation with a representative from Bloomfield Hills, and they had no idea that the Pike Street connector was going to be completed in a couple years, which is going to bring a lot of bikers, and they had no idea that potentially their residents may want a way to bike up to downtown Pontiac to get on the trail. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's just something you've got to think about long term about what's good for not just our community but our surrounding communities as well. So, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have one really quick thing, and then I'll. So I think I had brought this up when I was very new on the Planning Commission, and seeing the text amendments tonight kind of re-sparked it for me. But just something I would appreciate if staff looked into would be making it a base requirement for new builds to have truck turn analysis as part of the site plans. I am more specifically at minimum fire and trash truck turn analysis. There's been a handful, this isn't a big recurring thing, but there's been a handful of site plans that have come through where it's kind of iffy on whether a truck like that would actually be able to make the turns on site regardless of if the minimum aisle widths are met. So just something that I would appreciate if it was looked at internally as maybe a future text amendment.
Yeah, we may consider that. The one thing I would say about the fire department at Waterford is more often than not, they're, again, parking on the road to fight a fire for one reason or another. And sometimes it's the size of their vehicles. So, we'll definitely work with them, but that's why you probably haven't seen that as much. But in terms of dumpsters and other vehicles that may service the site, it is an important thing, and we'll continue to work through that. And there's some specific proposals that we may still be able to require that, even if the text is not in there, just because it may loosely follow a standard.
Okay. I just want to add, it's definitely a conversation we've had back at the office. We do believe that these are important and should be required more often. And we went over it earlier, but you'll notice in the automobile service ordinance update, we specifically called it out because of that reason.
Mm-hmm. That's what brought it back to my memory. But yeah, that was all I had. Chris?
Building specifications. I think the state of Michigan right now is revising some of the building codes and other items, but that makes me wonder. I know our zoning ordinance is implicit in that, or is that we build upon whatever is required for the standard building codes, but have we, I don't know that we've had that discussion about what a minimum building should look like in Pontiac, especially with regards to residential properties. I know we've talked about what the outside should look like, but the inside, are we looking at requiring certain energy efficiency things? Should there be a certain R rating on the walls, certain other things that maybe at this point we just want to ask, something that we see coming down the road? And in doing so and making that known, when we start to talk about a smaller property, that may make that a little more palatable and allow people to have a vision of, this isn't going to be a cheap, just a fly-by-night property, and maybe not one that's going to be wildly expensive, but at the same time, not one that's just going to be cheap fly-by-night type of property.
Thank you for bringing that up. I would say for that is something specifically we are targeting to evaluate through the zoning code rewrite. So, we are planning on, we're going to have an RFP ready once the master plan is adopted, that we start soliciting firms to help us with the zoning code rewrite. I expect that process not to be a consultant sitting in the corner. I expect not as much as the master plan, but I expect some engagement sessions with the community, with planning commission, with city council. And I think that housing is one of the topics. Now, we want to make sure this master plan and housing study, it aligns with that. And, the housing study is coming forward. It's getting finalized over the next month. We'll be coming forward to city council just for review. But we would want to make sure that it aligns with the kind of the community's values and where we want to go. I agree with you. I think there's an interest in getting residential design standards, particularly on the outside of houses. It's not that everything has to be a stone facade or anything like that, but we want to make sure that it is affordable, but also helps the neighborhood for long-term stability. What you don't want is the cheapest vinyl that falls apart constantly, and then you're creating blight.
I was also talking about the actual construction.
Yep.
Maybe straps and glue or something like that.
We should probably do that, though, in a larger community conversation to see what is most appropriate there as well. But it is a benefit. It is a cost for that, but it's also a benefit to the homeowners that own that. And the city, I would say that even though the master plan's not adopted yet, we're already we've asked the grants department for some of the short-term recommendations to start looking for grants for us, and some of that may benefit homeowners, some of that may just benefit the city, and let's get started. Let's at least see where we can get funds started on that for that process.
Okay. Well, if there's Mike.
I'll send my question regarding the master plan to you so you can make this a little shorter. My only question to you tonight is the Dell prescription sign. any status update on that? Because I am
Absolutely.
going to bug you until it's gone.
We actually talked to him. He's preparing to remove that once the winter, he's hoping to do it in about a month.
Could it go to the Oakland History Center?
I believe I asked the question, but to see, but I'll double check on that answer.
Thank you.
Go.
Happy birthday, Sue Sinclair, Commissioner Sinclair. Happy birthday month. As I marinated further, I think I do have some updates for the commission. Do you want to share, though, about your expanding team?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we have a planner one that is beginning with us next week. Has Pontiac roots, but is from Oakland. It lives in Oakland County right now. We're very excited. Actually has a law background, and I think it's going to really help us in the fact-finding mission that really staff has to do with many of these applications. So look forward to definitely introducing you to him, hopefully at the March meeting.
Very good. We did take multiple actions that aren't directly related to planning, but are about projects that this body has weighed in on. One is the Casa del Rey Apartments renovation that we approved a neighborhood enterprise zone application to allow, sort of their funding stack so that way that redevelopment can happen on 111 Oneida. Similarly, a neighborhood enterprise zone application was approved for Auburn Place Apartments or Lighthouses development at 454 Auburn, that 5-story apartment building that has come before the Planning Commission as well, in part to make that, to facilitate that action. There was also, so that was City Council, and those were the first NEZs we've ever done. We created the Neighborhood Enterprise Zone Economic Development Tool. Now we're begun utilizing them. I'll update this body as more move if they're related to projects that you've seen, approved, or moved forward. We have gotten a favorable news out of the state of Michigan with the Michigan Strategic Fund regarding a transformational brownfield at the former Oakland Press building, the former Federal's department store, vacant land that's at the northeast corner of southbound Woodward Loop or Cass and Huron. That will be new construction apartments, exchange flats. I can't recall how much that's come before this body yet.
So we have not received any, and so I've gotten a lot of calls about that. Hey, do they have site plan approval? They, I think, were waiting until they got the funding to move forward. I expect to see them before this board in 2025. While it is downtown, you think, oh, it's got to go HCC. No, there's 1 or 2 buildings that are in the historic district. A lot of this project is actually downtown, but not in the historic district, so it would be Planning Commission's jurisdiction.
So it's very substantial, residential, commercial, mixed use, public spaces, activation. It's very dynamic. So I'm sure this body will enjoy learning more and really moving it forward and learning about the site plan proposal. We also, I think we do have, it hasn't come before us, but I know it's come before your department broadly, community development, but there's a $48 million expansion and renovation to Trinity Oakland or St. Joe's Hospital. Their emergency room is being expanded, and so that'll be a project through 2027. It will always stay open. It's not like the hospital's closing or the emergency room's shutting down. It will still be active. Do we anticipate that coming to Planning Commission?
No, they've actually received a zoning certificate for just a minor site improvement outside. It's very, very minor.
Okay. So it's essentially their same footprint, but it's interior renovation, so it won't require something from us.
If I may just add on, Contour Windows, if you remember, they went through a rezoning and site plan process. They were having issues with MDOT getting 3 access points on Perry. I do want to say that he has at least shared with me that he's able to acquire the adjacent residential property, is in a due diligence right now. He's going to make some minor amendments to the front facade, not the front entrance, but we anticipate receiving something maybe in about 2 months. So nothing that would need to go back to this board or commission. We don't accept, unless it's a substantial change. So there was a little brief hold on that project, but it does seem to be moving forward. And Lighthouse got a conditional rezoning from this group a long, long time ago. There were some hiccups with right-of-way acquisition and easements and vacations, but that is moving forward. There may be an extension request to City Council at the beginning of the March 3rd meeting or March 4th meeting, but that seems to be moving forward, and they've done their part to keep continuing. There was a lot of work with WRC and some other utilities.
And of great interest to the community and this commission, the Oakland County redevelopment project downtown. The most immediate action is the phased demolition of the Phoenix Center. What had been shared with all of us is that it would be January. Obviously, January's come and gone, and it hasn't started. But so we have not received the city has not received a demolition permit from the county and their contractors yet. But we expect that ideally in February. So you may start see fencing, screening fencing go up before we have this next planning commission meeting. And that was as of Monday morning. Obviously, requests and applications could be filed since then as well.
And the Mark Twain School, while their site plan is not ready to move forward to Planning Commission, that might be a few months away. We did have a pre-application meeting for demolition, so they're going to do that first, resod the site, restore the site, and then come forward with the site plan. But we're anticipating the application within about 30 days.
The question was asked this evening in terms of build it in your neighborhood, and I just want to say, yes, I do welcome that in my neighborhood. I live across from the 40-year abandoned Central School and that rotting wasteland of a parking lot. I think that there is a lot of life and benefit that could happen with the historic renovation or repurposing of the land. But also in my neighborhood is Winston Commons, which is townhome apartments, all affordable, all attainable. And when I lived on Mechanic and now at Union, it was a lot of vacant land or empty houses or vacant land, and now it's a full, intact neighborhood block and dozens of housing units, and it's been a positive to the neighborhood. There's been no, blight increase, no crime increase, no traffic that's wild. It's positive in many different ways. So I just want to state for the record, yes, I respect that there can be differences of opinion, especially where you live, and I am going to be on this commission, on the city council, as a community leader. I have consistently been pro-growth, pro-progress. So if you don't want change, I'm not your guy. And if you don't want anything to be different, I'm not your guy, because I think we need a lot of change and a lot of forward movement in a lot of our neighborhoods and our corridors. And that's something I put my money where my mouth is. My votes reflect consistently. Throughout the city, that is the approach I want to take, and that includes in my own backyard, because there's a lot of growth that can happen as our neighborhood continues to evolve. So I respect the residents' frustration and passion. I just want to say, yes, that is my approach. It has been, and that would be the case.
And I'll say that it is in my neighborhood, and I did vote to approve it. So there you go. Following his advice. All right. Final call. All right.
Just one other item.
Making a motion?
February the 15th.
Chili time.
Chili time, Optimist Club, chili cook-off. I have tickets.
right.
That Saturday.
Motion. All in favor?
Aye.
I need a second. Someone say second.
Second.
I'll second. I think we got 4 seconds. How do we unplug him? Did you break the chair?
The bottom right, it kind of